on it. The other issue is, you know, are those safeguards really as robust as Kim Leadbeater is making out? Could you end up in a situation where it doesn't actually have to be a doctor, it has to just be a medical professional who signs it off? So could you end up in a situation where you just have, you know, pharmacists who will happily sign off your assisted dying form without very much intervention at all, and you get a sort of cabal of people who it is clear are very happy to sign these documents. The other issue is that what's happened in Canada is that what started out as quite robust legislation, which was intended for a very, very small group of people, has expanded so much because, yes, the safeguards were in there in the first place, but once the law is in place, then you will have plenty of people arguing, and you can see why. Well, there's a lot of bureaucracy in the way. What if you're desperate to end your life? You have to go through all these hoops and jump over all these fences to get doctors to sign it off, to get the judge to sign it off, etc. So they'll want that bureaucracy taken away. So are the safeguards really as strong as is being made out? As for the High Court judges signing them off, it's thought that they would have hundreds and hundreds of these to deal with every year. I mean, would they really have the time? So those are the issues which are being put forward by opponents of the bill. It's all being fought out on Friday. As you say, it's a free vote. Keir Starmer hasn't said which way he would vote on the issue, although previously he has voted in favour of assisted dying. Doesn't sound as though MPs are going to get very long to debate this at all because of the way it's coming through Parliament, because of the process. Private members' bill rather than government legislation. It'll be really, really interesting to see what happens on Friday. The assisted dying lobby definitely thought that it was sort of in the bag a few weeks ago, but now we have had these pretty major interventions from 3 cabinet ministers, Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, obviously very important, and Bridget Phillipson too, the Education Secretary. That may mean that it swings the other way.
Wow. It does feel very quick, though, doesn't it? I mean, in my view, if you're going to have something like that, you should have all the checks and balances in place before that comes out. But what they're saying, it's almost, it feels as though you could almost say, well, I need a sick note. I can get a sick note from a couple of doctors to sign something off for me if I really needed it. So, and as for the Crown Prosecution Service, well, that's going to take ages, isn't it? 6 months.
Well,
you're dead by then.
I mean, yeah, proponents of the bill argue that that it is a robust system having those 2 doctors in place. But I mean, as I say, in other countries, it hasn't quite worked out like that. I think lots of people, even those who are very pro-assisted dying in principle, are worried about the way it's being brought into Parliament. They don't think that a private member's bill is the right vehicle of legislation because it doesn't get as much scrutiny as a proper government bill. If this was government policy going through, you might get a bit more scrutiny. There are those arguing, those who are vociferously in favour of the bill, of the principle of assisted dying, say that MPs should vote for this bill even if they don't agree with all the fine print, because they can amend it at a later stage. I mean, I think most people who've watched Westminster happen will know that that doesn't really happen properly, and it would be quite a big risk to sign off on a bill you have qualms about, especially on something so important, in the hope that you can change it later on, because not clear there's going to be time.
Olivia Utley, thank you very much for that. Wow. GB News' political correspondent. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is Sir Keir Starmer right to target benefit cheats? This is GB News.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Restaurant St Bart's executive head chef Johnny Crowe creates ramen with a British twist, using only the finest UK-sourced produce. As the only restaurant in London to hold both a Michelin star and a green Michelin star, St Bart's emphasises sustainability and the diversity of British ingredients. Johnny joins me now. Johnny, congratulations on having these 2 Michelins. How do you get a Michelin green star?
Probably a better question for the inspectors, but I mean, I think it's down to a lot of hard work.
What hoops do you have to go through?
So I think it's working every day on it. The sustainability isn't something that you just achieve and then therefore you have it and you can sort of relax. It's about every day trying to be better, trying to make a restaurant and a business that is overly sustainable.
So what things do you do to make it sustainable?
So one of the main things that we've really tried to do is focusing on British produce, and actually, you know, part of that is about sustainability and food miles. A massive part of it for us was also about sort of helping the British economy and the farming economy and our fisheries as well. But yeah, no, the idea...
You have a lot of farms near St Bart's, which is in the heart of the City of London.
Well, funnily enough, there's an amazing collective called Shrub Provisions, who we use a hell of a lot, who work with farmers all around East Sussex. So it makes a difference from flying it in from Kenya or somewhere else like that. But no, like a big part of it was, one, using British produce to cut down on food miles, but also helping sustain our farming industry.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, welcome. This is GB News. It's 17 minutes after 3 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, do you support assisted dying? Now, a group of 29 faith leaders have joined forces to oppose it in what constitutes, I can't even say it now, in what constitutes the largest intervention from religious groups on the issue to date. Senior figures representing Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus and Sikhs have warned that a change in the law will turn to a right to die into people thinking that they have a duty to die. However, they are seemingly at odds with the general public, with the latest poll suggesting that around 2/3 of Brits support assisted dying. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you support assisted dying? Well, joining me now is the former deputy co-leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and also the founder and CEO of Youth Vote UK, Alexander Cairns. Right, well, they are both here. So, I'm going to start with you, Ben Habib. Assisted dying. I'm a little bit concerned myself, personally, because I find the notion that you only need 2 people to sign you off and all this thing a little bit disturbing. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, well, I'm dead against it.
Very
Forgive
good.
the pun. I mean, I'm against it because... For a multitude of reasons. One, I do believe in the sanctity of life, and I think that we already have a system where if people are too ill to be treated, we turn off the machine and we allow nature to take its course. I appreciate that some people will be in great pain, of course, you know, in the last few months, perhaps, of their lives, but there are perfectly valid ways of ameliorating that pain and making those last few months easy. But the real objection I have to it is that the state is already so involved in our personal lives, and if we give the state the right to kill people, however good the checks and balances might appear to be, you know, when that law is first brought in, you can bet your bottom dollar that those checks and balances will be eroded over time. And vulnerable people, and remember, they're talking about people who are terminally ill, people who are not completely compos mentis, not completely in control of themselves. They're very ill, right? These people are prone to being preyed on, if you like, either by the state or, frankly, by people who are close to them, who'd want them to shuffle off their mortal coil and exit the scene ASAP because they're a burden. And so I think, we see
Well, they might
that.
feel they're a burden as well, which I don't want...
And they might feel they're a burden,
Another
of
decision
course.
to make. Oh, maybe I should
Of course.
speed things up a bit because, you know, all this and that, and it's putting people under pressure, that sort of thing. Yeah?
I mean, I just don't think the state should have the right to take a life under any circumstances.
OK, do you support the death penalty?
I do not support the death penalty, no. I think that the death penalty if you could be guaranteed that the judicial process would never make a mistake...
Well, if they were caught on camera...
Then there are some people that I would naturally put down because I think they're vermin and a threat to society. But the problem is the criminal justice system is never as... You know, it seems to us, the people looking in at certain crimes, as though this is an open-shut case. But often things aren't quite what they seem.
All right, Alexander Cairns.
Yeah, I actually agree with Ben. You know, and you know, look, even though I personally agree, I can actually understand why Labour have introduced it, you know? Like, the reality is, it kind of semi-happens at the moment, you know? Unofficially, there's lots of hospitals where if people are in critically ill positions where, you know, the doctors are basically advising, and I use the word advising because, again, we can get into what that advice looks like, them that they may not have long to live, then essentially what the doctor's doing is pretty much saying to the family that we should turn off that life support machine, you know? And actually, there's a lot of pressure in the NHS, and some patients themselves that are in pain probably do want to, you know, be assisted to die because they don't want to be in pain anymore. And I actually think that the polling has suggested that people actually are in favour because they know lots of loved ones that have been through pain and weren't necessarily allowed to die quickly and had a long, slow death.
So aren't you saying you support assisted dying?
So I personally, if it was my family, I think I would struggle to actually say to someone I love, you know, I'm happy to let them die, you know, speed up the process.
Well, no, but if it's them who would say that they want to die.
Well, yeah, but I guess if they couldn't answer for themselves and had, you know...
That's the point.
Yeah, that's the point. You know, if they needed someone to basically, you know, advise them, I would struggle to turn off my mum or dad's life support machine, if I'm honest. But if I look at why the government have introduced that, I do understand there's other countries around the world. We look at states in the United States, Canada, Japan. There's lots of countries where it is legal, and actually the system there works quite well, where there isn't lots of people that have basically said that, you know, I can't believe that that person has been assisted to die and it shouldn't have happened. You know, it's about checks and balances, I agree, but actually I think as long as it's not rushed through and it's done in a measured way...
But do you think this is being rushed through? I mean, it's a private member's bill rather than the normal type of bill that would take more time and have more scrutiny. I mean, I don't understand why there's this major rush to do this.
Yeah, I agree. I don't actually know why they're pushing it through so quickly, but then I guess it's the overall urgency of the Labour government want to get on with things, you know? They're trying to get through a big legislative agenda, and actually people think that 4 or 5 years is a long time, but actually in British politics, how many times a reading has to go to the Lords, you know, there's lots of civil servants that have to do things. It takes a long time, you know, so...
Some things for good reason. I just think so are you saying that you, in a sense, would support it, but not if it were your parents?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying, which I can understand some people at home thinking, well, you know, Alex, like, get off the fence. But actually, I think this is why I think it's good that MPs are being allowed a free vote, right? Because I actually think that when it comes to your family, that's an emotional decision. But I think people can be objective and understand there's quite a lot of patients that are going to die at some point, and if they're in pain...
Nobody's living here.
Well, yeah, OK, so what I mean is...
You're a nice son, right? You love your parents.
Yeah.
There'll be a son out there who's thinking, I can get my hand...
There will be, not just sons and daughters.
But I'm talking...
It's an equal opportunity thing, isn't it?
And, you know, there was that woman who killed her parents and left them somewhere for however long, and then...
But we have a form of assisted dying by turning off the machines when it's a do not resuscitate order. And I appreciate people in pain, but we've got fantastic medicines to take pain away. And I just think if you grant the state the ability to take someone's life, no matter what the reasons are, that ability will, over time, get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I just don't want the state anywhere near that decision.
Also, where are the parameters? OK, so then it will be terminally ill, and then it'll be, oh, somebody who's maybe mentally ill, really wants to die. Then it's somebody who's got an illness that is incurable, but they have a projected life of this, but they don't like the way they're living. And then it could be this, and then it could be that. And then suddenly, it's a free-for-all where you can... Then it's opening the door to people who will abuse it, to relatives who might want their, as you said, their others to shuffle off, you know, the mortal course so they can get their inheritance. And you've seen the system at the moment. It's mess. So if you're going to introduce something like that, surely you'd have the health service running smoothly before you could even entertain it.
I mean, it's quite interesting. I don't know, I think I'm not misquoting, but Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, in that book, which is a brilliant book, I highly recommend it, you know, I think being ill, by memory, it's a long time since I read, being ill is a crime. And you can see, do you see where I'm going with this? You know, you're ill, you're going to die, so we're going to put you out of your misery quicker.
And then, like a very good friend of mine, she was told that she was terminal. She's got 6 months to live. That's what they told her. So she would be perfectly able to take advantage of this legislation. About 20 years later, she's still here. So, and she had stem cell treatment.
That's another very powerful point.
So, and she's fine, and they've actually cured the cancer that she had using stem cell treatment that was, you know, about 4 or 5 years ago. And obviously she has other issues now, but she's still here. And she was given 6 months to live by plenty of professionals and doctors and whoever. And they were wrong, completely wrong.
Yeah, so in fairness, it is estimates, you know, doctors come in and and this is the key thing, there is going to be inconsistencies, I agree. Some doctors are probably going to get it massively wrong. I mean, that's a case where I can't believe that, you know, that's crazy to say that actually she was told 6 months and 20 years later.
And she's been on GBNews as well. Sandra, if you're watching, good afternoon. Yes, Sandra Hamilton, she won't...
And there are many
cases.
cases.
Saying she set up a charity called Cure Cancer, and she's helped many others. But, you know, this is somebody that I know, and I've just come across this lady as a normal, in life normally, not, you know, not... And that's somebody I know that was told that they had so short to live, and there are others.
But I guess the conversation is going to be about quality of life, because some people like that. It's really good to hear that she's still alive, but some people are told 6 months, maybe it's 9, 12 months, but actually in that period, their quality of life, you know, isn't necessarily great. Some people that go through chemo, you know, it's a very difficult life for them. And actually, I think that's a difficult conversation, because I guess, you know, people might say, you know, I do want to be assisted to die, and if it's not legal, they won't be allowed, you know.
But also there's this extra pressure now. If you're ill and you're told that you may not have long left, there's an extra pressure now for you to think about, oh, maybe I should just, you know, get out of people's way quickly.
Hurry it up.
Kind of thing. And I think, again, we need to consider how... I don't want to have that pressure on me now to know that I could potentially do something else to...
I thought the religious leaders were interesting, you know, saying that not citing the sanctity of life, which is what all those religions, I think even including the Hindu religion, believe in, the sanctity of life, but coming up with the reason, I think it was slightly circuitous. You know, they weren't actually nailing their colours to their own faith.
And what about the argument that actually we are now putting control into the hands of, you know, for doctors and people like that? I mean, I know most doctors are good, and but we have had Howard Shipman and people like that. You know, there are people, there are bad people on this earth. Not many, but there are bad people on this earth.
There are many bad people, and we see stories again and again in care homes where the elderly are abused by those who are put in charge for looking after them, and often sedated most of the last few years of their life because it's the easiest way to control them. And no, I mean, I think we've got to be very, very careful with giving powers to the state and therefore the medical profession in deciding who lives and who dies.
I think it's the minority of health professionals that maybe would, you know, abuse their power.
But so what? So what? I mean, there are only a minority of people who flew into the Twin Towers. There are only a minority of people. The minority can do a lot of damage.
Of course, but the majority can do a lot of good, you know? Like, we've got to go with the majority where we know that the training of health professionals in this country, there are, you know, lots of rules and regulations to make sure that doctors don't abuse their power. And if they do, and we see it in social care, we see it sometimes in hospitals, they're rightly held to account, you know? We're not going to make a decision because we're worried that the minority will basically abuse the power, you know?
I think on this situation, we should be thinking about that. And also, there are too many layers that are inefficient. So the CPS, they're useless. It'll take you at least 6 months for anything to come through. By that time, if you have 6 months to live and you're lucky enough to have that time, you'll probably be dead anyway.
Only 7% of serious crime ever results in an arrest. Only half that proportion ever results in a charge. You've got a 97% chance of getting off with a serious crime.
Exactly.
So we've got to be very careful.
And if you're somebody who has, you know, assisted somebody to die but done it in a way where you may be crooked or whatever, you probably won't even be prosecuted yourself.
But actually, I think we should praise the Labour government, looked at prisons, they know it's overcrowded. A lot of reasons that things don't get to the stage where people potentially get sent to prison is because they were overcrowded for a long time. So actually, objectively, we've got to look at that and say, you know what, they've looked at it, they're going to remove some of the offenders that potentially shouldn't be there, and we know that there's lots of petty crime, kind of, you know...
They've released some people who should absolutely be there.
Well, of course, they're not going to get it perfectly right, but actually, you know...
opportunity for things to go wrong and errors. This is the problem. Without the full scrutiny of this bill, and I think there needs to be more time on it, just to say that the majority of the British public support it, I don't even know whether that is true. I don't know whether that is. I don't support it.
Yeah, I mean, two-thirds.
It was two-thirds who don't support it.
It was a stunning poll to say two-thirds of the poll supported assisted dying. I was amazed by that.
Well, I didn't feel that it was true.
It doesn't...
But there have been other polls that have indicated that I think the support will waver, depending, as you say, on the detail and what happens. And obviously, some people are worried, are they going to be put in the position where they're going to be asked, are you happy for your mum or dad, their life machine to be turned off? And that's a very difficult conversation,
That happens anyway. That conversation happens anyway.
Yeah.
But there's no pressure on the person who is ill.
It'll probably happen more often.
Have to think about it, and I think that's a bit unfair. But what do you think? gbnews.com/you'll say it's 31 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, do you want another general election now? Over 900,000 people have signed a petition calling.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Storm Bert continues to give strong winds and some outbreaks of heavy rain in places too, and exceptionally mild for the time of year. Huge contrast to what we had just a few days ago. Storm Bert, just sat across the north of the UK, continues to push its way eastwards. Tightly packed isobars there indicating strong winds for many of us, and heavy rain too. Rain particularly heavy across central southern parts of England and Wales as we go through this evening time. Blustery winds and frequent showers across the northwest of Scotland as well. Gusts here 60-70 miles an hour for a time before easing a little later into the early hours. Temperatures overnight 6 or 7 degrees across the north, still holding on to double figures in the southeast. So mild for the time of year. Rain, though, initially across southeast England, but this starts to clear away. And if we look at the details for Monday morning, the centre of Bert still just sat there near Orkney and Shetland, giving strong winds, outbreaks of rain, frequent showers across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures around 6 or 7 Celsius. Brighter for Northern England into central parts of England and Wales, but a scattering of showers in the west. Still some blustery winds, and as I mentioned, the rain clearing southeast England too. So Monday for the day ahead is a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Showers most frequent across the north and the west of the UK. It still remains quite windy here, particularly across northern Scotland, with the centre of the low just pushing its way eastwards. Colder air starts to dig in behind, and we could see some of the showers turn to sleet and snow, particularly over the higher ground. Temperatures here maximum staying in single figures, so a little nearer to average for the time of year. In the south, around 10 or 11 Celsius. As we go into the evening time, further showers pushing their way eastwards, remaining windy across the north of the UK. Perhaps another area of rain moving across into southwest England later on in the day. And for the next few days, it remains mixed. There'll be further showers and rain at times, but there will be some sunshine and temperatures nearer to average for the time of year.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and we've got so much to get through today, I've got to say. It's just fast approaching 34 minutes after 3 o'clock. And it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, do you want another general election now? Because over 900,000 people have signed a petition and it's still climbing, calling for just that. Thousands of people signing every single minute. The Prime Minister could be faced with a humiliating debate in Parliament. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you want another general election now? I've also got a poll up on X asking you that very question, so let me know your thoughts. Well, joining me now, the former deputy co-leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, also founder and CEO of Youth Vote UK, Alexander Cairns. Alex, we're going to start with you. So what are you thinking?
I don't want another general election. I think there's a portion of the country, as always, and we see this, a lot. People forget there was over 4 million people that did a petition on the second referendum, and nothing happened with that. So there's always going to be frustrated people in the country, right? But we have a parliamentary system where there's an election, there will be a 4 to 5 year term, right? I don't remember the Tories, and there was always petitions where there's a few 100,000 people that signed it when they weren't happy with Johnson, how he's dealing with lockdown. We're not going to have a situation where every time there's a petition that now suddenly, the Labour government have to call an election, The Labour government, not the Tories, where they're going to do a snap election every few years, There's a little bit of stability, I think.
Yes, he calls it stability. Ben Habib.
Well, I don't think this petition will result in a general election, even if it got... if it got to 9.7 million people voting in favour of another election, that's the same number of votes that Labour got, so that would be interesting. But I think there's people say to me, Ben, there's no chance of this government giving up its huge majority, no matter what happens between now and 2029. And I don't agree. I think that there are pressures that can come to bear that could force this government back to the electorate. And the most obvious one is a collapse in the economy. And I think some of the measures taken by Rachel Reeves already are not playing out the way she expected them to play out. Sterling, I don't know if people are watching, but sterling is down 7% against the dollar in the last 3 months. That's a very significant move in sterling, and that's not a general strengthening of the dollar. That is sterling weakening on its own. That is basically people saying they don't want to buy British products, they don't want to buy British debt, British investments. And a crucial component of this government being able to finance itself is foreigners buying British bonds. And they don't need to buy British bonds. Most people, as investors, have to have some exposure to US treasuries because the dollar is the currency of the world. But the sterling isn't. It's not the reserve currency of the world. So people don't have to buy our bonds. And there's a very, very real possibility that she's got her numbers wrong, that she will need to borrow more money than she says she's going to have to borrow, that growth will go through the floor. It will be in a recession. In fact, all the indicators are that we're heading into a recession. Unemployment will rise. And even if they put up interest rates, they won't be able to get people to buy British government bonds. Then you have the United Kingdom going off to the IMF, cap in hand, saying, please, can we have a bailout? And that would be a disaster for any government. And I think that you can then force a general election on a government if they absolutely collapse the economy.
What about that, Alex? Because that is... No, but the people can rise up. If that poll or that petition gets to over 9 million, it's taken very short time for it to get to almost 1 million, about a couple of days or even a day, I think it is. So people are angry. And it's not just people who didn't vote Labour, it's lots of people who did. So we're talking... Who would have voted Labour in this? We're talking...
well, a lot of the people who voted for Boris Johnson in frustration because he converted a lot of Labour voters to him, didn't he? But in frustration with the Tories not actually doing small C conservatism, not delivering... I know we can have a debate about Brexit separately, but actually not delivering Brexit, frustrating the desires of so many people in the Red Wall, they did vote Labour. I know many people voted Labour as a knee-jerk reaction to the Tories. And they will float back. They'll float either back to the Tories or to Reform or, if they really not thinking straight, they might vote Liberal Democrat.
Look, they've upset the farmers. They've upset the pensioners. They've upset the middle class in general when it comes to schooling for the VAT raid. They've upset businesses, small business owners and big business. There's a lot of people that they have upset. Very few people I can think are happy. Civil servants.
Every single member...
And maybe train drivers.
Some nurses are happy, some doctors are happy, some train drivers are happy. There's going to be portions of the public... Look, it's going to take a long time. They've only been in power a couple of months.
But look at the devastation in a couple of months. They were arguing about Liz Truss's is what Liz Truss did.
Yeah.
And they're saying, give us more chance. Nobody gave Liz Truss a chance to make things this
Well, no, because she crashed the economy. I mean, look...
No, she didn't.
She didn't.
guys.
The markets reacted.
Because of her policy, you know, we're not going to dispute that them cutting the 45% upper tax bracket...
I tell you what's going to be quite interesting.
And unfunded... Come on, Ben, you've got to agree on... She crashed the economy.
No, she didn't crash the economy. She crashed them. What happened was sterling reacted badly, and the pension funds, which are now fully invested in government bonds because interest rates went up, we had a pension funds crisis, which we shouldn't have had if we'd had proper joined-up governance of our investment institutions beforehand. She made no impact on the economy. This is a big mistake people make. The markets reacted to Liz Truss, and on the back of the markets, the Bank of England and others got rid of her.
But why did the markets react to Liz Truss?
Yeah, because effectively what they thought she was doing was creating an inflationary spiral. So interest rates went up because of all the tax cuts she was doing.
Yes,
actually,
yes. Unfunded, yes.
Well, I mean, there's 30-odd billion of unfunded tax of spending pledges made by Rachel Reeves in the last budget.
Yeah.
45 billion is going to be raised through tax increases, but there's another 32 billion of additional government borrowing she's going to have to do as a result of her last budget. And that the OBR seems to have accepted that. But if in 6 months the government isn't getting the receipts from the private sector that it thinks it's going to get, and the borrowing requirement is higher than 32 billion, and I'm talking about 6 months, I think it's going to be quite quick. We're going to see sterling under pressure. We're going to see the Bank of England thinking, do we raise interest rates now to protect sterling? Are we importing inflation? And a whole lot of things can go wrong at that point.
OK. As much as potentially some things can go wrong and there's a lot of doomsday in there, I'm a lot more positive about what the Labour government are doing, building more housing. They've put an end to some of the strikes that were causing a lot of economic harm to the country. The workers' rights bill, very, very good for a lot of young people that I represent, you know, that are being kind of abused by employers that don't pay them enough. There's lots of positives, you know, the justice system, there's lots of people in prison that shouldn't have been there, the prisons were overcrowded. So it's all well and good us talking about the negatives, there are positives. And look, I think the petition that you're talking about, yeah, it might get to 2-3 million. You know, 4 million people voted for reform. You know, 6 million people voted for Tories. There's going to be a portion of Labour voters, portion of reform, and a portion of Tories that don't like what they're doing.
So how many would it be until you would acknowledge that maybe the Labour government is that unpopular that perhaps they need to have a rethink?
If it got to more than 4 million, potentially I would, because that's how many people signed the petition that wanted a second referendum that didn't want us to leave the European Union because they knew it would cause harm. And nothing was done about that. So if it gets to more than 4 million, I'll be the first to admit they need to change course, yes.
Yeah, but that was a referendum where they said that they would follow the vote. This is a general election where they've given us pledges and promises, and they haven't done any of those things, and they've done things that they never told us about. So winter fuel allowance, farmers, you know, there are things that...
Employers' national insurance.
And splitting between public and private sector as well. Now, I've got a quote from Rachel Reeves. I'll see if we can find it. We played it yesterday. A quote from Rachel Reeves where she says exactly how devastating a rise in national insurance would be for employers, and yet she's gone ahead with it. So this is the problem that we're having. And then even seeing how badly this is affecting the farmers, the raid on inheritance tax, I mean, that's utter madness.
It is terrible.
It's not, guys, it's not terrible. You know, it's a very fair system where for a long time the farmers have been exempt from inheritance tax. Tell me why, right? When you've got people that work hard to get a house, second house, right, and they have to pay inheritance tax, why should farmers be exempt? Because some of their assets cost a few £100,000.
No, I'll tell you why.
The nation.
Do you know what?
No.
Yeah, they are, but actually...
Okay.
But on that point, Nana, 20% of farms produce 80% of food, right? And those 20% can definitely... These are not small farms, they are very big companies.
So they'd be paying a lot of inheritance.
No, but actually it's a fair system. It's not 40%, it's 20%. And actually 40% of farms or estates are owned by private investors. This is not a cultural question about, you know, oh, we're going to run out of food. Come on, guys.
So I would just say that farming is a very, very tough job. The farmers have been on the receiving end of bad policy for 30, 40 years, ever since supermarkets were allowed to become hypermarkets, and the economies of scale that they could drive, you know, the buying power that gave them, and they were able to screw down farmers' margins. Farming has been a very unprofitable business for just about anyone in farming. And So they've suffered greatly as a result of that. They suffered greatly, believe it or not, as a result of the Common Agricultural Policy, where they were required to adhere to certain regulations, leave certain fields fallow. I know they got subsidies, but the subsidies actually only paid for the damage that the regulations were doing. And at the same time, we offshored a lot of our food production to Europe. We are now a food-dependent country. Even now we are. And the thing about the small farms is that they are owned by patrician families who do it for a love of the land and because they have the skill set required to do it. It's not an easy job to do. Not many people wish to do it. And the skill sets required are very specific. If these patrician families can't hand these very low income generating properties from parent to child and so on, you break that patrician family ownership and they will not come back. And that'll be the end of many rural communities. And we will, I'm afraid, do huge damage to our socio-economic setup
and the
if we let these farmers
land. They're looking after the land. Why? If you imagine the value of each of these farms in terms of the land, of course land is expensive, but that doesn't mean that you're cash rich. It just means that you've got a lot of land that you've got to farm, and there's a certain amount of land that you need to be able to farm to be cost effective. The smaller your farm, the less likely you are to turn a profit, and there's a lot of work in it. And I think this comes from a lack of understanding of how farming works, for them to think that it's wise to tax the people who provide the food for the nation. It's utter madness.
But so 40%, whether we agree or not, 40% of our food comes from the EU, supply and demand, right? You know, we know for a long time there's been farmers that produced whatever they produced, beef, you know, milk, eggs, and actually the cost of that went up. Now, we can have a conversation about that, but for ordinary people, they can't afford it, right? So lots of people go to the supermarket, and actually, I think a big portion of the country looked at it and said, you know what? Yes, there's a portion of farmers that do produce food locally for us, right? But a big portion comes from a couple of big farming kind of estate companies, and a big portion comes from the EU, right? And actually, this is a fair system where there's lots of people, investors, that have looked at the estate and knew that there was tax relief reasons, Jeremy Clarkson and others.
Yes, so you can attack those individuals who are not farming.
Oh, but it's true. I just think logistically but it'd be very complicated to do that, right?
It wouldn't be. If it's even more complicated to do this other thing, and actually far worse, if you really wanted to attack those people who take advantage of a loophole in the system, then you could specifically target those without annihilating your farming. Now, you may say, oh, it's only 40% comes from me and 40% in times of war, in times of drought or starvation, or especially as they're going on about climate change, in those times, you need things on your doorstep.
We should eat
local. You saw what happened with COVID, where, this country doesn't want you to have the vaccines, and so we're going to stop the vaccines that you've bought coming across the border because we need them. You know how it'll go in times of war. You need to be sustainable. And if we're going to be sustainable and protect the environment, travelling all around the world, getting food supplied here and there, your carbon emissions will go through the roof.
But the biggest issue to the farming sector has been leaving the European Union, right? The red tape and the issues that farmers... And if you poll farmers...
The European Union has been awful. 80% of farmers voted for Brexit.
But they voted for Brexit not realising what it would do to red tape and their supply chain.
We're moving into Brexit, so I'm going to move away from that.
I'm just saying. You know.
Only because we're running out of time. Next, is Putin ready to wage a cyber war against Britain? The senior minister will warn that Moscow could target British businesses and leave millions without power. This is GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The latest Channel 4 Dispatches documentary has revealed details about the royal family's finances, including reports that private royal estates have received millions of pounds of income from public bodies and charities.
Morning, and good morning, Stephen. Absolutely, I'm not shocked either. And also, as a former butler, I was also a duchy rentee. I used to rent one of the properties, and we were always aware of the property portfolio. I don't think it's kind of a bit news thing. Obviously, part of the, if you like, the business side is these two duchies, Cornwall and Lancaster, and the late Queen obviously was the Duke as well of Lancaster, and now you've got the Prince was obviously, or the King, when he was Prince, had the duchy, and these properties, portfolios as well. I mean, obviously they make money. I mean, but they've been around for, I think they go back to George III, if not before.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
51 minutes after 3 o'clock. Now, Russia is ready to wage a cyber war against Britain. A senior cabinet minister will warn NATO members next week. Pat McFadden will reportedly tell a conference that Moscow is prepared to launch a wave of cyber attacks on Britain and turn the lights off for millions of people. He'll also add that the UK and others are watching Russia and are countering their attacks both publicly and behind the scenes. So is Britain in a cyber war with Russia? I'm joined now by the former Defence Minister, Tobias Ellwood. Tobias, thank you very much for joining me. We only have about 3 minutes, sadly. So is there any truth to this? And if so, how severe could it be?
Yes, 100%. We are at war with Russia when it comes to grey zone. We've got a traditional and outdated view of conflict, I'm afraid, associating it with the hard power on the battlefield like we see in Ukraine. But the character of conflict has changed immensely, given the digital world we now enjoy. Every aspect of our lives, how we communicate, trade, work, socialise, can now be interfered with from afar. It's more cost effective, you can cause more harm, and of course there's deniability there as well. And that's exactly what Russia has been doing for some years now, and it's getting better and better at it, and we are simply not ready for this. The economic harm, they sow political discord, hoping to sway public opinion, and of course undermine trust. This is exactly what Russia does through its grey zone warfare. Achieved through covert operations, through its cyber attacks, its disinformation, other forms of campaigns. It even has, we've seen assassinations on British soil. We are in a grey zone war with Russia. And as soon as we wake up to that, then we'll place in perspective exactly what's going on in Ukraine, because this isn't just about Ukraine. Russia is on a mission, clearly, to penetrate and disrupt our national security and cause instability. But without provoking any direct military confrontation. And we really do need to wake up for that.
Yes, I thought so, because they don't obviously want a nuclear strike because we can retaliate. They don't want that. So they're using other things. But how will they turn the lights off? How will they do that?
Well, this is exactly what Pat McFadden, who I have a lot of respect for, will be saying. And he'll be repeating the words that Tom Tugendhat have used as well. By infiltrating through cyber capabilities how our critical national infrastructure works, they're able to put in viruses and so forth, which will then turn the lights out. Or they'll affect the NHS as well. That's another way of causing economic problems as well as social discord as well. This, as I say, is the new form of warfare. This is where our world is sliding towards. And that's why we need to spend more money on our defense. When we say defense, it isn't air, land and sea. It's the cyber capabilities. It's in space as well. We are an open and transparent society is now so easy to disrupt from afar, and we need to get better at protecting ourselves.
All right, Tobias Ellwood, thank you very much. Next up, my niggle on Sir Keir Starmer and whether he's out of his depth. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Storm Bert continues to give strong winds and some outbreaks of heavy rain in places too, and exceptionally mild for the time of year. Huge contrast to what we had just a few days ago. Storm Bert, just sat across the north of the UK, continues to push its way eastwards. Tightly packed isobars there indicating strong winds for many of us, and heavy rain too. Rain particularly heavy across central southern parts of England and Wales as we go through this evening time. Blustery winds and frequent showers across the northwest of Scotland as well. Gusts here 60, 70 miles an hour for a time before easing a little later into the early hours. Temperatures overnight 6 or 7 degrees across the north, still holding on to double figures in the southeast. So mild for the time of year. Rain, though, initially across southeast England, but this starts to clear away. And if we look at the details for Monday morning, the centre of Burt still just sat there near Orkney and Shetland, giving strong winds, outbreaks of rain, frequent showers across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures around 6 or 7 Celsius. Brighter for Northern England into central parts of England and Wales, but a scattering of showers in the west. Still some blustery winds, and as I mentioned, the rain clearing southeast England too. So Monday for the day ahead is a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Showers most frequent across the north and the west of the UK. It still remains quite windy here, particularly across northern Scotland, with the centre of the low just pushing its way eastwards. Colder air starts to dig in behind, and we could see some of the showers turn to sleet and snow, particularly over the higher ground. Temperatures here maximum staying in single figures, so a little nearer to average for the time of year. In the south, around 10 or 11 Celsius. As we go into the evening time, further showers pushing their way eastwards, remaining windy across the north of the UK. Perhaps another area of rain moving across into southwest England later on in the day. And for the next few days, it remains mixed. There'll be further showers and rain at times, but there will be some sunshine and temperatures nearer to average for the time of year.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers. Sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries costs £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's coming up to 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me for the next few hours, former Deputy Co-Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and also the founder and CEO of Youth Vote UK, Alexander Cairns. Coming up, I've got a poll up on Twitter, on X. I'm asking you, do you want another general election? In my niggle at 4 that is coming up, what do you think? Get your answers in, let me know. Also send us your messages, gbnews.com/your say. Then in the interview, I'll be joined by a 5th-generation farmer whose sheep are trapped after heavy flooding after Storm Bert battered Britain. Plus, farmers have warned the Chancellor that the budget inheritance tax raid will spell the death of the farm shop. So, for the Great British Debate, I'm asking, is it time for Labour to U-turn on inheritance tax? And for Fox's sake... Animal rights activists have demanded that a pub in Birmingham changes its name to something less offensive towards foxes. But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Katie Bowen.
Nana, thank you. It's just gone 4 o'clock. These are your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. Police say a body has been found in the search for Brian Perry after he went missing while walking his dog near a river in the north of Wales. The 75-year-old went missing yesterday as floodwaters rose in the area, with the Coast Guard and North Wales Police involved in the search for him. That comes as a major incident has been declared in South Wales. Speaking a short time ago at a press conference, authorities in the area say between 200 and 300 properties were affected by today's flooding, and a bridge which was replaced after Storm Dennis has been completely washed away. The storm has brought more than 80% of November's average monthly rainfall in less than 48 hours. More than 200 flood alerts are in place in the UK as it continues to sweep across the country. A yellow wind warning has come into force for large parts of England, with gusts of up to 65 miles per hour expected in some places. A man died yesterday morning after a tree fell on his car due to the weather conditions, and 2 others died yesterday in crashes on the roads during the stormy weather. Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall says NATO countries are involved in a hidden cyber war with Russia. That comes as the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster will warn that Russia could turn the lights off and won't think twice about exploiting defence gaps in the UK. Pat McFadden is expected to give the warning to NATO members next week. In a speech, he'll urge countries to bolster cybersecurity and not underestimate the threat of cyber warfare with Russia. It follows warnings from experts last night who urged Britain to remain firm and stand strong against Vladimir Putin's threats. Shadow Levelling Up Secretary Kevin Hollinrake told GB News Labour need to increase the UK's defence spending now.
One of the highest spenders in NATO, constantly have been, but we recognise there are growing threats around the world, and that's why we committed to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. And that is a commitment not matched by the Labour government. They've made some kind of general commitment to get there at some point in the future, but the threat is now, and we should bolster our defences now. We made that firm commitment. Labour should do the same.
Elsewhere, the Justice Secretary says the state should never offer death as a service. Shabana Mahmood made the comments in a strongly worded intervention over the assisted dying bill ahead of a historic Commons vote next week. In a letter to constituents, Ms Mahmood said she was profoundly concerned by the legislation, not just for religious reasons, but because it could create a slippery slope towards death on demand. She's previously made clear she won't vote against the bill alongside Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who faced backlash after suggesting the changes would cost the NHS more. A group of faith leaders have signed a letter opposing the bill ahead of its debate by MPs. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has declined to say whether he will back the bill, arguing that he doesn't want to pressure MPs. Chief Executive of Labour Together, Jonathan Ashworth, told GB News it's not a good idea.
There are 2 things that would concern me. First of all, I just worry about the pressure that this would put people who are in the most desperate of circumstances, the pressure they would be under. I just think it would change societal norms about that, and I'm not sure that we're ready for that as a society. And secondly, we all know that end-of-life care in the country is just not satisfactory. The hospice movement are phenomenal, but they have been underfunded for years. And I just don't want people feeling that they are a burden or that they feel their time is up and they have to make these decisions.
A man who police initially believed was stabbed on Westminster Bridge this morning actually suffered a cardiac arrest, the Metropolitan Police have confirmed. Officers were called at about 10:45 this morning after a fight broke out on the bridge in central London. The force said initial reports suggested the man had been stabbed, but further inquiries confirmed that this was not the case. Investigations are ongoing and the man remains in hospital in a critical condition. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband has called a financial package for developing nations a critical 11th hour deal at the 11th hour for the climate as the United Nations Environmental Conference drew to a close. Delegates at COP29 in Azerbaijan agreed a new climate finance target. They pledged $300 billion a year, that's £239.5 billion, to help poorer countries deal with the impacts of climate change, with rich countries leading the payments. It was feared the conference would collapse after some of the poorest nations had walked out of talks. US President Joe Biden said that while substantial work remained to be done, the conference has set an ambitious international climate finance goal. However, the African group of negotiators described it as too little, too late. And finally, Novak Djokovic has appointed Andy Murray to coach him into and through the Australian Open. Announcing the collaboration, Djokovic said he's excited to have one of his greatest rivals on the same side of the net. In a video posted on X, the Serbian said, "We had some of the most epic battles in our sport. I thought our story was over, but it turns out it has one final chapter." Three-time Grand Slam winner Andy Murray retired in August after exiting the men's doubles at the Paris 2024 Olympics. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Did you vote for this?
I have a problem with Lincolnshire. Have the people of Lincolnshire upset you in any way? Because you seem to have upset an awful lot of people in the county since you were elected back in July.
No, I've got absolutely nothing against Lincoln. It's a fantastic county, an underappreciated county, huge, rural, beautiful, and I've been there a number of times.
All right, or did you vote for this?
Well, we have a very cold snap at the moment, Prime Minister, here in Lincolnshire, and a lot of people concerned about the winter fuel benefits as well. Let me just play you this from Maxine, who was on the show earlier.
We just can't keep warm. People are going to die. Elderly people are literally going to die. How's he going to live with that? Is he going to have the courage to back down from a terrible decision?
She's wearing extra layers. She can't put the heating on this week, despite the cold weather, because of your decision to withdraw her winter fuel payment.
Well, every pensioner who's entitled to pension credit will
She's 63. She won't be pension age till 67, so she's not entitled to pension credit.
Or did you vote for this?
We had a publican from our part of the world who told me from April of next year he's going to have to add 30p to the price of a pint. Was going to be £4.50. In April, it'll be £4.70 to £4.80. I'm no economist. That sounds like inflation to me.
And that is actually coming from the BBC when he did his little regional rounds. I mean, aren't they supposed to be his friends after the easy ride they gave him into number 10? And I thought Labour were going to protect working people.
A budget for working people from a government for working people.
Great, but what is a working person?
Working people is people who earn their living, rely on our services, and don't really have the ability to write a cheque when they get into trouble. So the sort of people I'm meeting pretty well every day now.
We should have known the red flags were there. It took our great leader almost 2 years to define a woman. This was embarrassing.
A woman can have a penis.
Nick, I'm not... I don't think we can conduct this debate with you know.
Sorry, have I offended you in some way?
No. It's just no. I just.
A woman can have a penis.
I don't think that discussing this issue in this way helps anyone in the long run.
I mean, is anyone out there happy with this lot? In my view, there'll be nothing left if we let them run roughshod for 5 years. So is it time for another general election now? Well, I can tell you now that the petition that's asking that very question has now passed 1 million signatures. But before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Sir Keir Starmer right to target benefit cheats? The Prime Minister has vowed to crack down on anyone who tries to game the benefits system with a zero-tolerance approach to criminals. But is he right to do that when there are so many other things he could target, like that huge bloated civil service? In Worldview, I'll be joined by the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge, who will update us on the latest as Donald Trump continues to assemble his cabinet. And in the interview, joining me, a farmer from Wales by fifth generation, Paul Williams, will tell us about how Labour's planned inheritance tax rate will impact him and his family farm. That is coming up in the next hour. As ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/you're safe. Well, joining me now, former Labour Minister Dennis McShane. Was I right in my niggle? Should we have known? Were the red flags very visible? We just ignored and took the only option that seemed possible?
Nana, you're so young. You see, I have come through so many governments and prime ministers. Mrs Thatcher, when she came in, she plunged herself into the deepest unpopularity. She could hardly leave Westminster because she was shouted at and booed. And over 2 years, her opinion poll ratings plummeted. And she didn't ever appear on local radio shows. I mean, right now, the Prime Minister's far more exposed. But
I'm going to show you. Well, it turned around, but did she have a poll against her? This is a poll right now. We're watching it in action as it goes up, as people are voting or with their feet or polling with their feet, saying they want another general election. It's over 1 million.
This is a GB News poll?
No, it's not GB News.
Who's the polling company?
Well, it's a petition. It's a petition.
A petition. OK. Well, let me say...
I've got a poll up on X asking that question.
No. I mean, let me just say again, as a young MP, even young and active in the Labour Party, I go into any pub and there was somebody having a petition to bring back hanging or cancel gay reform, to send gay people to prison. Yes, people will always want another election. And believe me, have we not seen that elections... Let's think of the one in 2015, did that solve anything? The one in 2017, did that solve anything? The one in 2019, that produced a disastrous government. And now people are complaining about the one in 2024.
Well, this is...
Welcome to the real world.
Yeah, but this one's particularly bad, Dennis. No. This is particularly bad because they've got this massive majority. They don't appear to be listening to anyone. And you've got it's not only just the usual suspects, but you've got people who would have naturally voted for them complaining. A lot of the pensioners, you've got farmers, you've got business owners, business leaders, everybody's complaining, and they're not listening. So if they don't listen, and we've got no power because they've got such a large majority, this is another way of speaking.
You can complain, everybody can complain. If the Prime Minister had to listen and do what every person complaining to him wanted, then literally everything would grind to a halt. Now,
at least do something that some people want, don't you think?
Starmer has taken a set of decisions which have tried to send a message about stability, which is why the International Monetary Fund and other international financial bodies are saying after the Truss and Sunak and Johnson disasters, it looks as if Britain is grown up enough to take tough decisions. Those tough decisions will help people. You had the case of the person saying, I've got to put on extra clothing because I've lost the winter heating allowance. I'm not sure that £300 over a year makes a difference.
Well, it will do
warm.
Well, it does. Maybe she can buy another... Dennis, maybe she can buy another jumper. And let's not forget Labour's own poll or their own sort of research that showed that up to 4,000 pensioners would die if the Tories put in that very policy. So they're doing it, so they should know this.
And I'm a Labour person. I was on maybe your show, another GB News show, when that was announced, saying, I don't think this is a good idea.
Yeah.
All right, so
it's a very bad idea. But that's it, isn't it? So there's lots of very bad ideas. The farmers, do you think that's a good idea to introduce inheritance tax?
All I know is that I've got 4 grandchildren, 4 children, maybe more grandchildren, and anything I might want to leave to them, some of it will go to the state, because all those farmers have got a free hospital care, their roads are repaired, their kids go to school for free. All of us pay a dime for that for farmers. I'm not quite sure why only a fairly small number of people. I'm sorry for poor old Jeremy Clarkson, who's invested all his cash to avoid paying death duties, might be caught by it. I'm not sure if he will. I don't know how big his farm is.
Well, he actually has a farm, though, and he's actually running the farm as a farm. So even if he thought he would do that, he's turned into an actual farmer. Those who are actually doing it.
But on the whole, there's no other country in the world which allows this, and certainly there's no other country in the world which allows rich tax dollars.
Are you sure that other countries tax inheritance tax on farmers? I don't think that's true, Dennis. And in fact, many countries do not even have inheritance tax.
One or two,
like New Zealand.
One or two don't, because New Zealand farm stretches like from here to Birmingham.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they don't even have inheritance tax.
But they do have them in similar G7 countries to Britain, because
which ones? Which country? Do they tax the farmers in this way?
East and west from London.
Sorry?
Look east and west from London.
Well, which countries?
Ireland, France, Italy, Spain, Germany.
So you're saying Ireland, France, Italy. I'll check that.
Yeah, please do. And because the general view is that if you've got sitting on a lot of money and everybody else in the country is paying for the things that you have, we all have police on the road.
Yeah, no,
but
look, the farmers are different because they're providing the food for this country. So you know the saying, never bite the hand that feeds. We need the farmers. So in other words, you need to incentivise them to continue. Sorry, Dennis, let me finish. Right. You need to incentivise them to continue working on the land, and you want to continue having that land. What do you think they're going to do if they can't pay the inheritance tax? They're going to sell land to who? Big businesses, developers, solar panel people, wind farms.
Okay, that's the official NFU line.
No, that's it's not. It's my view.
It's your view, but it happens to coincide with what the farmers want to do.
Common sense
is not to pay the tax everybody else has to pay. Why do my children have to not get the money that I've saved and for them?
No, they will. They will. You will, because you're probably not that rich, Dennis, to be honest.
Oh, that's true. That's definitely true. Appearing at GBNews,
you'll be fine.
Remain permanently poor. I mean, Olivia will confirm that.
All right, Dennis McShane, thank you very much. He's a former Labour minister. Well, joining me now to discuss more on the political stories, political correspondent Olivia Utley. Olivia, right? Should we start with this petition that appears to have risen to over 1 million? Who is this petition by? Is this a government petition? What is it?
It's just a petition by a member of the public who wants to see the back of Keir Starmer. I should say, first up, that this won't come to anything. These petitions do the rounds on social media. Because of the nature of social media, they do gain traction quite quickly. And, you know, once a petition reaches 100,000 votes, there is a precedent to debate it in some way in the House of Commons. So I think we can expect to see a debate. But Keir Starmer isn't just going to call a general election on the back of a petition, and he will make the point that nearly 10 million people voted for him in the general election back in July. All of that said, it's not a good look for a Prime Minister who was elected with such a really big majority, actually, in July, just 4 seats short of what Tony Blair won in 1997, who, of course, went on to win 2 more terms in office. You know, you would expect a Prime Minister elected under those circumstances to have a long honeymoon period, and he hasn't really managed to have that at all. His premiership started off badly through no fault of his own because of the riots that we saw over the summer, and it's sort of gone from bad to worse in terms of public approval ratings since then. We have had, as we've talked about a lot on this channel, that winter fuel payments decision that has been very, very unpopular across the country. Just to recap, that means that people who aren't on pension credits of pension age will no longer receive a winter fuel allowance. This comes at a time of energy bills rising. Ofgem have said that they are putting the cap for energy bills up, so the average energy bill is going to increase by about £100 next year for the average family. The other thing which is really, really unpopular, and I think we're only just beginning to see the effects of it, is this hike to employer national insurance tax. Now, over the general election, as we've talked about, the Labour Party said that they would not raise taxes on working people. By that, they meant income tax, national insurance or VAT. I mean, they've sort of stuck by that promise. Because, yes, they haven't raised national insurance on the individual, but they have raised national insurance on employers. And obviously that feeds very directly down into the individual's pocket, because what happens is companies who operate on very fine margins, particularly, retail or care homes, they are unable to pay this higher national insurance bill, and so they fire people, or they don't hire as many people as they would have done otherwise. So that's the effect that it's having. It's making Keir Starmer very unpopular in the poll ratings. He's far behind where Boris Johnson was at a similar stage in his own premiership, even though, of course, Johnson had a much smaller majority. There will be probably a Westminster Hall debate on this. It won't mean anything substantial, but it'll probably be a bit embarrassing for Starmer.
And what about this? Keir Starmer is now doing something that a lot of people would have expected a Tory government to do. He's talking about benefit cheats.
He's talking about benefit cheats. I think we were sort of expecting that from this particular Labour government. We've heard a lot from, Wes Streeting talking about waste in the NHS. They are prepared to say these sort of, in some quarters, unpopular things which are normally said by those on the right. Obviously, cracking down on benefits cheats is something which is easier said than done. The Conservative government attempted many, many times to do this, and we know that there is a massive problem with worklessness among working-age people. So in some cities in the UK, there are 1 in 5 working-age people who aren't working for whatever reason. And Jeremy Hunt tried 2 budgets to try and get those people back into work. It didn't prove very effective. Perhaps Keir Starmer's crackdown will be more effective simply because, as a Labour politician, this issue is perhaps less toxic for him than it would be for a Conservative. But we'll have to wait and see.
All right, Olivia Utley, thank you very much. She's GB News' political correspondent. 21 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? You've missed almost half the show, but it's fine. Still an hour and a half left. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, the Prime Minister has vowed to tackle Britain's bulging benefit bill. So I'll be asking, is Sir Keir Starmer right to target benefit cheats? This is GB News.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
The row over Prince Harry's US visa will be brought back into focus.
Earlier this year, Nigel Farage asked Donald Trump about this very issue. Let's take a listen.
No one knows the truth. What did he put on his American visa form?
If they know something about the drugs and if he lied, they'll have to take appropriate action.
Appropriate action? What could that mean?
Well, the fractured relationship between the president-elect and the royal couple, or ex-royal couple, I should say, began in 2020 when the Sussexes urged American voters to stay clear of Trump, urging them to reject hate speech, misinformation and online negativity.
OK, well, to break down this story for us, we're joined by royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Richard, so what are the chances of Trump saying, you know what, Harry, time to get out of here?
I very strongly suspect that the new administration has other priorities, and also it wouldn't want the enormous amount of fuss. Can you just imagine it in hypothetical situations if it happened? I mean, we've seen Nigel Farage there get an answer from Donald Trump, which implied that this might be looked into, and it might.
The Americans say that if you have taken illegal drugs, you're not allowed immigration status. Prince Harry, in his book, said he'd taken illegal drugs, and there he is with American immigration status. I mean, how do the two things make sense? Either he lied in the book, or he lied to the US government.
I can't see that the future administration would want to be involved with problems with the British royal family, which obviously would occur if this happened.
Yeah, that's true. Richard Fitzwilliams, thank you very much, as ever.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
24 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you just tuned in, welcome. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is Sir Keir Starmer right to target benefit cheats? The Prime Minister has vowed to get a grip of Britain's bulging benefit bill once and for all. Writing for the Mail on Sunday, which I think is quite unusual for a Labour politician to be writing in the Mail, he said the government will make sweeping changes to the country's £137 billion welfare bill. But critics say he's stealing Conservative policies. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Sir Keir Starmer right to target benefit cheats? Well, joining me now, Deputy co-leader, former Deputy co-leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and also the founder and CEO of Youth Vote UK, Alexander Cairns. Ben Habib, is he right?
Well, it's interesting. His wording is not reduce benefits, but to target benefits cheats. So he's going to, it seems to me, allow the profligate expenditure that we have on benefits to continue, but only target people who are cheating. And I think this is... You know, we talked about the long arm of the state wishing to get involved in assisted dying and so on. I think this is another step of the state, actually. This is his justification now to look at people's bank accounts and to be able to see what they're doing, how much money they're earning, whether or not they're genuinely entitled to the benefits that they're getting. I think he's been very clever in the political positioning of this, putting it in the Mail, making it look like a right-wing policy by putting it in the Mail. But actually, it's benefit cheats. And this will be more interference by government in those people's affairs, in our affairs, in everyone's affairs, because he's going to get banks to spy on people. That's how I see it.
Says Sir Keir Starmer, a freebie-gate. Alexander.
Look, I think it's so funny because people always complain that the left are too soft on people that claim benefits. And actually, now that he's looking at the welfare system, people are complaining it's only for people that cheat the system. You know, why not go full hog and look at the whole system? Actually, it's very complicated. He's not going to be able to just rush things through. He needs to look at it. There are portions of the country that do need benefits. You know, we look at the disabled. There are people on long-term sick. Some of the mental health struggles, obviously, you know, there are people that definitely need it. But there are people that probably could have gone back to work, and there are potentially some people that should work, and I agree with that. And actually, that's what this policy is going to look at.
But do you take Ben's point that this could be an excuse to try and get into people's bank accounts to see what they're earning and things like that?
No, I don't.
They are doing that. They're already doing it. They're already doing it.
I haven't. OK, well, maybe there's been some reports on that. I think for a long time, look, there's been monitoring of people's accounts from a fraud perspective for a long time. It doesn't necessarily mean that the state is going to be looking at your account thinking if you get above a certain amount that we're going to now reduce the amount that you get for benefits. I don't think we're that far.
But they're going... I mean, there was one lady who went, I think it was 23 pence over what she was allowed every time she was paid it. And what happens if you have to pay the whole thing back?
Well, I mean...
You have to pay the whole thing back.
It is extraordinary. They are, I mean, I don't wish to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but they are absolutely nailing your ability to act freely through, for example, the prohibition on the amount of cash you can now deposit in your bank account per annum. Did you know there's a limit of £30,000 cash that you can deposit in your bank account now?
I didn't know that. Yeah. I don't have £30,000 to ever find out.
So, good problem to have, right?
It's just ever more control. But what he does need to do, I take your point completely, there are people who need benefits, but there are now 3 million people. We discovered the other day, because the government published the statistics, 3 million people in this country, 10% of the workforce, claiming mental health disability and therefore not working at all, not even looking for a job, and on benefits. And that cannot be right. I do not accept that there are 3 million people in this country who have a mental health issue so serious that they're unable to work. We all have mental problems. We all suffer from a degree, or I do anyway, from a degree of depression. I try and cope with it by going to the gym, working hard, keeping myself busy, and then having a double gin and tonic at night. But, you know, that doesn't prohibit me from working. You have to get on and work. And I think we've created a situation now where benefits are so generous and the tax... First of all, the wages you can earn in this country are so low, and those wages are taxed so highly that staying on benefits has become almost a career choice. And we do need some tough love. We do need to withdraw some benefits absolutely withdraw them after, let's say, after a year or two, you've been on benefits, you need to be taken off that, have that pretty much removed. And then we've got to cut taxes on those who are working so that it makes sense for them to work. And if you take people off benefits and you get them into work, it's a double benefit for the state, because the state stops paying out for those people who are on benefits and starts getting money from them instead, because they're paying taxes. Are you with me? So cutting taxes, reducing benefits is a virtuous circle, and we need to get into that virtuous circle.
So you kind of agree with him then? He's right to do that?
No, but he's targeting cheats. I'm saying you've got to actually pare back significantly benefits that are paid out.
Yeah.
But I actually think we've got to look at the source of the issue, right? A long time, the minimum wage in this country has not been where it should be. And actually, the Workers' Rights Bill actually means that there will be a good incentive. I agree with you. There is a big incentive to not work, and that's wrong. And I think even people on the left like me look at that and say, actually, we want people to work. But then you can't have employers that absolutely take the mick and don't pay you well, and then have people on zero-hour contracts and just cut you, Of course, you're going to think...
But zero-hour contracts can be good for some people. Some people still want them, so they shouldn't just be simply removed. And some employers need them as well. So,
I would never agree with zero-hour contracts. Just knowing people...
Have you ever done a job where you... I mean, this is like a zero-hours contract. What you're doing here is a zero-hours contract.
Well, yeah.
Well, you're not on a contract, but when we need you, we call you. You're saying that you need to be an employer?
No, but I'm saying that
that's a zero-hours contract, and you said you want to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Which would mean we wouldn't be able to bring you on air.
Well, no, because I actually think that most...
You wouldn't be able to come on air, though.
But why? Because most people would be able to...
Workers' Bill, if you're saying no zero-hour contracts, they should be removed completely, that's you in this job.
No, but I want to remove them completely, because I still think that even here, they could get to a point where there's a 5-hour commitment every month, Well, I'm doing a couple of shows a month. I mean, if you look at the situation, there probably is most people...
But it depends, but this is a news channel, so it's subject-based.
Of course, but I think most employers can get to a point where they give at least some commitment, and I think
Have you ever run a business?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
but I know people that run businesses, right?
That's great. But you're saying that we should have that, and we should get there. But you've never run a business, you've never employed anybody, so you don't know. And the bottom line is this: employers with these policies that are coming in, that's all the minimum wage is going up. It's going up,
rightly so.
So is the NI national insurance contribution.
It's hitting employers.
So the employer.
So it's going up by 1%.
So the employer won't want to employ extra people like you.
But my perspective is always going to be there can be a position where they have a very minimum amount of hours, so people are guaranteed to get at least some work, right? If you poll people, majority of people don't want to be on a zero-hour contract. They want some stability and certainty.
Well, I think that if you run a business and you understand employment law and have been an employer, then you probably would understand a little bit more about it, because I don't think that's...
I would just add, the employment bill does foist a whole load more burdens on business, and the reaction that business will have to that is to sack people.
That's it. That's
the bad circle that we need to get out of.
All right. Well, listen. Thank you very much, Alexander Cairns, and also Ben Habib. Right. Well, stay with me. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. Coming up, World View. Joining me from Los Angeles, the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge. He's going to bring us up to date with the latest on Donald Trump and his cabinet appointments. But first, let's get some news with Katie Bowen.
Nana, thank you. Your top stories this hour. Police say a body has been found in the search for Brian Perry after he went missing while walking his dog near a river in North Wales. The 75-year-old went missing yesterday as floodwaters rose in the area, with the Coast Guard and North Wales Police involved in the search for him. That comes as a major incident has been declared in South Wales. Speaking a short time ago at a press conference, authorities in the area say between 200 and 300 properties were affected by today's flooding, and a bridge, which was replaced after Storm Dennis, has been completely washed away. The storm has brought more than 80% of November's average monthly rainfall in less than 48 hours. More than 200 flood alerts are in place in the UK as it continues to sweep across the country. A yellow wind warning has come into force for large parts of England, with gusts of up to 65 miles per hour expected in some places. A man died yesterday morning after a tree fell on his car due to the weather conditions, and 2 others died yesterday in crashes on the road during the stormy weather. Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall says NATO countries are involved in a hidden cyber war with Russia. That comes as the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster will warn that Russia could turn the lights off and won't think twice about exploiting defence gaps in the UK. Pat McFadden is expected to give the warning to NATO members next week. In a speech, he'll urge countries to bolster cybersecurity and not underestimate the threat of cyber warfare from Russia. It follows warnings from experts last night who urged Britain to remain firm and stand strong against Vladimir Putin's threats. The Justice Secretary says the state should never offer death as a service. Shabana Mahmood made the comments in a strongly worded intervention over the assisted dying bill ahead of a historic Commons vote next week. In a letter to constituents, Ms Mahmood said she was profoundly concerned by the legislation, not just for religious reasons, but because it could create a slippery slope towards death on demand. She's previously made clear she would vote against the bill alongside Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who faced a backlash after suggesting the changes would cost the NHS more. A group of faith leaders have signed a letter opposing the bill ahead of its debate by MPs. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has declined to say whether he will back the bill, arguing that he doesn't want to pressure MPs. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Storm Bert continues to give strong winds and some outbreaks of heavy rain in places too, and exceptionally mild for the time of year. Huge contrast to what we had just a few days ago. Storm Bert, just sat across the north of the UK, continues to push its way eastwards. Tightly packed isobars there indicating strong winds for many of us, and heavy rain too. Rain particularly heavy across central southern parts of England and Wales as we go through this evening time. Blustery winds and frequent showers across the northwest of Scotland as well. Gusts here 60-70 miles an hour for a time before easing a little later into the early hours. Temperatures overnight 6 or 7 degrees across the north, still holding on to double figures in the southeast, so mild for the time of year. Rain though initially across southeast England, but this starts to clear away. And if we look at the details for Monday morning, the centre of Bert still just sat there near Orkney and Shetland, giving strong winds, outbreaks of rain, frequent showers across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures around 6 or 7 Celsius. Brighter for northern England into central parts of England and Wales, but a scattering of showers in the west. Still some blustery winds, and as I mentioned, the rain clearing southeast England too. So Monday for the day ahead is a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Showers most frequent across the north and the west of the UK. It still remains quite windy here, particularly across northern Scotland, with the centre of the low just pushing its way eastwards. Colder air starts to dig in behind, and we could see some of the showers turn to sleet and snow, particularly over the higher ground. Temperatures here maximum staying in single figures, so a little nearer to average for the time of year. In the south, around 10 or 11 Celsius. As we go into the evening time, further showers pushing their way eastwards, remaining windy across the north of the UK. Perhaps another area of rain moving across into southwest England later on in the day. And for the next few days, it remains mixed. There'll be further showers and rain at times, but there will be some sunshine and temperatures nearer to average for the time of year.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back if you just tuned in. Where have you been? It's fine, it's fine. 21 minutes to go for this hour, another hour as well. So you've come in at a good time. I'm Nana Akua. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. And it's now time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time for Labour to U-turn on inheritance tax? for farmers. Farmers have warned that Labour's planned inheritance tax raid will result in the death of farm shops. Now, those are those lovely little shops where you can buy produced food that mostly has been produced on the farm. They're lovely, and during the pandemic, they were essential, and also low carbon footprint because the locals go and buy things from them. And this is because they will have to close down, or at the very least, lay off staff in order to pay inheritance tax bills upon the passing of their loved one. Now, government spokesperson responded to the warnings by saying that the government's commitment to farmers remains steadfast. We have committed £5 billion to the farming budget over 2 years. What do you think for the Great British Debate this hour? I'm asking, is it time for Labour to simply just U-turn on the inheritance tax raid on farmers? Well, joining me now is the former deputy co-leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and also the founder and CEO of Youth Vote UK, Alexander Cairns. Alexander Cairns, is it time for them to look at this and U-turn now?
I don't think it is. I think what they're doing is looking at a system where a lot of people, especially private investors, have been trying to exploit paying tax, buying up big portions of private farmland estates and looking at ways basically to have that as a strategic investment and not pay any tax on it at all. I think there's a portion of, I think about a third of farms are going to be affected, 2/3 are not. And actually, there's a lot of people that if they're handing down to direct children, they're not going to pay any inheritance tax. There's a big portion of people that will not be included in this. So I don't think it's an unfair system. People that have property have to pay inheritance tax anyway.
Where did you get your figures that only a third of farmers will be affected?
I think I'd seen multiple reports, actually. I think they'd say 20 to 30%. I'd read it in different... The board shades, the Times, I think, reported on that. I think I've seen different figures. We can argue if it's 20 or 30%. I don't think it's the majority.
Well, it is, actually. And a lot of the farmers are saying the government have got their figures wrong.
Well...
So if it was, say, 95%, would you say that that's too high a figure for it to affect? Seeing as they're only trying to catch a few people dodging paying tax by buying some land, surely they could target those specific individuals. Would it be that difficult, would it?
Well, if the figures stated that it would affect 95%, which I haven't seen those figures, then yeah, OK, I would potentially have a bit different perspective. But even more broadly, I think it's a fair system. A lot of people that have property have to pay inheritance tax, and there's a double standard.
But what about the fact that they're actually farming the land to provide the food basket for the country? Is that irrelevant?
Well, it's not irrelevant, but I've said for a long time that a small portion of farms are producing the bulk, and 40% of our food comes from the EU. Yeah. So I just don't think we need to get into this culture war.
But a larger percentage will be produced by the EU. I mean, if you look at many third world countries, the problem they have and the reason why there's famine is not for shortage of food, it's food supply. So we don't want to be in a situation where we do not have supply of food. Ben Habib.
I think we, just on that point, I completely agree with you, and we've turned our back in the pursuit of ever cheaper consumer goods. We've turned our back on national security in many respects, in food, creation of steel. We're lobbing missiles at Russia, but we're unable to build tanks and ships in the United Kingdom from our own steel. It's not joined up thinking. And countries need to keep strategic, important industries local and under UK control, so that when, in times of extremists, we are able to stand on our own 2 feet. And food is absolutely one of those things. And, if you are pro the whole climate, the fear of the climate change and the pro-net zero policy, then actually growing food locally and eating seasonally, like we used to when I was a child, rather than being able to get strawberries 24/7, 365 days a year, makes perfect sense. And it's also good for farming, because then they grow what they can at a particular time of year, and naturally their fields get turned over into other things.
Yep.
But there is definitely a thing of Labour doesn't like the countryside. Most people who live in rural areas vote Conservative. They don't vote Labour. There's been a whole... it's the way the countryside was labelled racist. Do you remember? And it's also partly why I think Tony Blair felt able to ban fox hunting, because it was a class war thing. But as much as I agree with the farming point, inheritance tax itself is an evil tax. It's a tax on people who've already paid all their taxes, saved up money, bought properties, and then when they die, they get taxed again. And I would also like to make this last point, if I may, that small and medium-sized businesses are being caught in the same change in inheritance tax. We focused on the farmers correctly. They need protection and someone needs to make their case. But there are a lot of SMEs in this country. 96% of businesses in this country are SMEs. And they're going to get caught by this inheritance tax too. And they work on small margins too. They work with specialised skills. And we're going to see a reduction in economic activity across the board because of this change in inheritance tax.
Ben, I think it's very doomsday. I would really disagree with a lot of you just said. I do not think, look, the inheritance tax is only going to apply to farmers that actually are thinking of selling, or passing down.
On their death.
So, lots of people, it's not going to, firstly, it's coming in April 2026. It's not going to suddenly be a situation where that policy comes in and all the farms go bust. I mean, it's very dramatic, right? And also, there's about 4 or 5% estimate that people pay inheritance tax in this country, right? It's a very small percentage of people. So whether you want to get into the conversation about whether inheritance tax is fair or not fair, the point is,
more and more people are being dragged into it because they're not moving the thresholds into and paying.
But the point is, do you think it's a fair system that for a long time farmers on their estates have not had to pay and people that have worked hard for their house have to pay?
No, I think that there's a perfectly valid case for the protection of economic activity and for national security and so on, that certain businesses are exempt. And SMEs, I think, trading businesses owned by British private individuals should not pay inheritance tax, in my view. They shouldn't. Because you want that protection. You want the economy. Let's say you run a business that is worth a couple of million quid and you've got to pay a 20% tax. There are only 3 ways to do it. You break up your business, you borrow the money, or you sell your business.
All right, listen.
None of it's a good outcome.
They're sitting on a nice asset.
No,
that's my opinion.
They're not sitting on it. They're working it, and they're providing food for this country.
A portion of them are providing
food. Well, food, livestock, and all the things that we need in this country. And I think it would be very unwise to deplete that. But thank you very much, Alexander Cairns and Ben Habib. Coming up, we'll be heading over to the US to get the latest from President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet appointments with Paul Dudderidge. This is GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
This is one of those angles, really. There's going to be so many different sort of tentacles which go from Donald Trump winning and where this leads for the royal family. Where's it going to lead for Harry?
Well, put it this way, Harry's just bought a house in Portugal and it might come in pretty handy in the next few months because Donald Trump has said in the past that he wouldn't protect Harry, that he would be on his own, and that if it was down to me, this is Donald Trump, if it was down to me, he wouldn't have any protection. And the Heritage Foundation tried to expose his form, and in the end, he was protected, and a judge ruled that the form would never be revealed. I just wonder whether now Trump is in power, I'm not saying it's top of his priority list, but eventually that form might be exposed.
And just so to remind viewers and listeners, Charlotte, in his book Spare, in which he, of course, dumped tons of abuse on his own family, Harry admitted to taking illegal drugs such as cocaine.
Yes, and there have been, I better not name her, but there's been a certain supermodel who has been exposed for taking cocaine. She couldn't go into America for 10 years. It doesn't matter how famous you are, you can't take drugs and go into America. They're very strict on this. So if Harry didn't tick that box, and then he wrote in Spare that he's taken magic mushrooms, marijuana and cocaine, it wasn't a very clever move.
Oh, the implications, though, of Donald Trump saying that Harry can't live in America, like the political ramifications of that. I can't see Starmer handling that very well.
No, and well, he just might say he wants people in America who've told the truth about drug taking, and he's got zero tolerance on illegal drug taking, Trump.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. Welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's now time for Worldview. I'll bring you the latest from the news around the world today. Joining me from Los Angeles, the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudderidge, who's got some updates on the latest. Well, Paul Dudderidge, it's been a while. What's been going on in America? We've got Trump's core cabinet. He's choosing them. Is it complete now?
The main, I think it's 15 appointees. The core cabinet is now complete, and there was a few little things like Secretary of Agriculture, for instance, was selected yesterday, Brooke Rollins. But some of the juicier, more controversial selections are just annoying all the right people. We've got. Well, I don't know if you must have covered the story this week. Matt Gaetz withdrawing his submission to be the Attorney General, and immediately Trump replaced Matt Gaetz with a woman called Pam Bondi. And anybody on the left who complained about Matt Gaetz is probably going to regret, because she is a bit of a hard nut. She's a much more MAGA than even Matt Gaetz is. One of her desires announced was to deport any Hamas sympathizers or pro-Palestinian protesters. So she's going to be coming in a bit of a new broom, and it's going to be a bit of a shock to the system for the Attorney General position, which is often a bit more political. We've just had Elizabeth McMahon, I think that's her name. Linda McMahon, I beg your pardon, Linda McMahon, formerly running World Wrestling, the WWE, Linda McMahon, she's now going to be Secretary of Education. And her main job seems to be to disband the federal Office of Education. So it's going to be kind of interesting. People are going, well, what does she know about education? And it's like, well, she probably knows how to disband an agency that's way past its sell-by date and is ineffective. So it's causing all the right forms of controversy all over the United States. Everybody who should be upset is upset.
That's good, because a lot of people criticising Donald Trump and his cabinet. And I'm thinking, I remember that press secretary on Joe Biden's cabinet and all his people, so I think they should close their mouths. What about Trump's New York hush money? The sentencing has been delayed, hasn't it?
Yes, well, 24th. It should have been on the 26th. He was going to be sentenced, and that's been pushed again now. And at the same time, the judge has delayed and deferred the actual sentencing. He's now permitted Trump's lawyers to apply to dismiss the case entirely.
Of course.
So hopefully in December, we will be able to stop listening to people saying he's a convicted felon, because the case could very well be dismissed.
Well, that will be dismissed. Now, I want to get onto this. People saying, I think Biden's literally trying to start World War III, just with the things, saying that they can fire long-range missiles and everything else like that. Is that the view that other people are taking, or do they think he's doing what he should have done ages ago?
Well, everybody is saying it. Even people on the left are saying it. It's quite extraordinary. It's such an extraordinary move when you think that there is... Look, he met, there's the president meeting with Joe Biden there in the White House. But normally the handover is a little bit less controversial. The idea that Biden's administration is allowing something as inflammatory as long-range missiles into Russia is obviously an act of provocation, but also an act of trying to disrupt the Trump handover. Because, as we know, Trump is a peace president. Trump doesn't want conflict. He wants trade. So this is being seen as very much a deliberate, provocative act by the exiting Biden administration.
All right, let's squeeze this one in. Trump, 48. There have been loads of calls for Kamala to finish the term as president immediately.
Yes. This is coming again from Biden's own side, that he is unfit to complete these next couple of months. And, we can see it's quite an unstable administration right now. And so if he steps aside and Kamala steps in, she will become 47. So all the 45, 47 hats will have to be melted down again and reconstituted. Trump could be the 48th president. And that would allow Kamala to pardon Hunter Biden as well. So that's just a sidebar, because Biden has said he won't do that.
Oh, it's
so it's a possible. Even it could even be for a week or two in January that she's allowed to be president.
All right, well, listen, Paul Dudridge, as ever, a pleasure. It's Paul Dudridge, host of the Politics People podcast. You're with me, Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, a $300 billion climate deal has been reached. COP29, stay tuned.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Storm Bert continues to give strong winds and some outbreaks of heavy rain in places too, and exceptionally mild for the time of year. Huge contrast to what we had just a few days ago. Storm Bert, just sat across the north of the UK, continues to push its way eastwards. Tightly packed isobars there indicating strong winds for many of us, and heavy rain too. Rain particularly heavy across central southern parts of England and Wales as we go through this evening time. Blustery winds and frequent showers across the northwest of Scotland as well. Gusts here 60-70 miles an hour for a time before easing a little later into the early hours. Temperatures overnight 6 or 7 degrees across the north, still holding on to double figures in the southeast. So mild for the time of year. Rain though initially across southeast England, but this starts to clear away. And if we look at the details for Monday morning, the centre of Bert still just sat there near Orkney and Shetland, giving strong winds, outbreaks of rain, frequent showers across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures around 6 or 7 Celsius. Brighter for northern England into central parts of England and Wales, but a scattering of showers in the west. Still some blustery winds, and as I mentioned, the rain clearing southeast England too. So Monday for the day ahead is a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Showers most frequent across the north and the west of the UK. It still remains quite windy here, particularly across northern Scotland, with the centre of the low just pushing its way eastwards. Colder air starts to dig in behind, and we could see some of the showers turn to sleet and snow, particularly over the higher ground. Temperatures here maximum staying in single figures, so a little nearer to average for the time of year. In the south, around 10 or 11 Celsius. As we go into the evening time, further showers pushing their way eastwards, remaining windy across the north of the UK. Perhaps another area of rain moving across into southwest England later on in the day. And for the next few days, it remains mixed. There'll be further showers and rain at times, but there will be some sunshine and temperatures nearer to average for the time of year.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed boiler repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here
We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome. It's just coming up to 5 o'clock. This is a GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, former Deputy Co-Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib. This way, Ben, we're over here. And also the founder and CEO of Youth Vote UK, Alexander Cairns. Coming up, over 1 million people have now signed the petition calling for another general election. Just 4 months, almost 5, after Sir Keir Starmer was elected. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I've been asking, is the Prime Minister out of his depth? I've got a poll-up on X asking you whether or not we should be having another general election. You'll get the results of that at the end of the show. Then in the interview, joining me by a fifth-generation farmer whose sheep were trapped after heavy flooding after Storm Bert battered Britain. And we'll be discussing COP29. Nations have agreed on a $300 billion deal a year to fight climate change. But developing countries say that it's too little too late. Jim Dale and Paul Burgess will go head-to-head at the top of the hour. And for Fox's sake, animal rights, have to be very careful with that one. Animal rights activists have demanded that a pub in Birmingham changes its name to something less offensive towards foxes. But before we get started, let's get your latest news. It's Katie Bowen.
Nana, thank you and good afternoon. It's just gone 5 o'clock. These are your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. 4 people have now died as a result of the weather brought to the UK by Storm Bert. It comes as the storm has brought more than 80% of November's average monthly rainfall in less than 48 hours, with more than 100 flood alerts in place across the UK. That comes as a major incident has been declared in South Wales. Speaking a short time ago at a press conference, authorities in the area say between 200 and 300 properties were affected by today's flooding, and a bridge which was replaced after Storm Dennis has been completely washed away. Yellow warnings for wind and rain are in place for western parts of Scotland and Wales, South East England and Northern Ireland. Travel disruption is continuing across the country, with rail passengers in the north of England being urged to check before they travel. Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall says NATO countries are involved in a hidden cyber war with Russia. That comes as the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster will warn that Russia could turn the lights off and won't think twice about exploiting defence gaps in the UK. Pat McFadden is expected to give the warning to NATO members next week. In a speech, he'll urge countries to bolster cybersecurity and not underestimate the threat of cyber warfare from Russia. It follows warnings from experts last night who urged Britain to remain firm and stand strong against Vladimir Putin's threats. Shadow Levelling Up Secretary Kevin Hollinrake told GB News Labour need to increase the UK's defence spending now.
One of the highest spenders in NATO, constantly have been, but we recognise there are growing threats around the world, and that's why we committed to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. And that is a commitment not matched by the Labour government. They've made some kind of general commitment to get there at some point in the future, but the threat is now, and we should bolster our defences now. We made that firm commitment. Labour should do the same.
Elsewhere, the Justice Secretary says the state should never offer death as a service. Shabana Mahmood made the comments in a strongly worded intervention over the assisted dying bill ahead of a historic Commons vote next week. In a letter to constituents, Ms Mahmood said she was profoundly concerned by the legislation, not just for religious reasons, but because it could create a slippery slope towards death on demand. She's previously made clear she would vote against the bill alongside Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who faced backlash after suggesting the changes would cost the NHS more. A group of faith leaders have signed a letter opposing the bill ahead of its debate by MPs. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has declined to say whether he would back the bill, arguing that he doesn't want to pressure MPs. Chief Executive of Labour Together, Jonathan Ashworth, told GB News it's not a good idea.
There were two things that would concern me. First of all, I just worry about the pressure that this would put people who are in the most desperate of circumstances, the pressure they would be under. I just think it would change societal norms about that, and I'm not sure that we're ready for that as a society. And secondly, we all know that end-of-life care in the country is just not satisfactory. The hospice movement are phenomenal, but they have been underfunded for years. And I just don't want people feeling that they are a burden or that they feel their time is up and they have to make these decisions.
A man who police initially believed was stabbed on Westminster Bridge this morning actually suffered a cardiac arrest, the Metropolitan Police have confirmed. Officers were called at about 10:45 this morning after a fight broke out on the bridge in central London. The force said initial reports suggested the man had been stabbed, but further inquiries confirmed that this was not the case. Investigations are ongoing and the man remains in hospital in a critical condition. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband has called a financial package for developing nations a critical 11th hour deal at the 11th hour for the climate as the United Nations Environmental Conference drew to a close. Delegates at COP29 in Azerbaijan agreed a new climate finance target. They pledged $300 billion a year, that's £239.5 billion, to help poorer countries deal with the impacts of climate change, with rich countries leading the payments. It was feared the conference would collapse after some of the poorest nations had walked out of talks. US President Joe Biden said that while substantial work remained to be done, the conference had set an ambitious international climate finance goal. And finally, Novak Djokovic has appointed Andy Murray to coach him into and through the Australian Open. Announcing the collaboration, Djokovic said he's excited to have one of his greatest rivals on the same side of the net. In a video posted on X, the Serbian said, "We had some of our most epic battles in our sport. I thought our story was over, but it turns out it has one final chapter." Three-time Grand Slam winner Murray retired in August after exiting the men's doubles at the Paris 2024 Olympics. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now, let's go back to Nana.
Good afternoon, 7 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, wealthier countries have promised to give developing nations a whopping $300 billion a year to fight climate change, but some critics say the deal is too little, too late. Talks at the COP29 in Azerbaijan run 33 hours late. It nearly collapsed after the agreement fell well short of the $1.3 trillion developing countries were expecting. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Sir Keir Starmer out of his depth? With over 1 million people calling for another general election, has the Labour leader bitten off more than he can chew? And in the interview, joining me, fifth-generation farmer Paul Williams, who will tell me how Labour's planned inheritance tax rate will impact him and his family farm. As ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. So a $300 billion climate deal has been reached to help developing nations fight climate change. Talks at this year's COP29, I mean, there's been 29 of the damn things, in Baku ran over by 33 hours and nearly collapsed after the agreement fell short of the $1.3 trillion that they were hoping to raise. The deal was finally met with cheers and applause. The furious speech from India showed that the many nations were not pleased. So is the COP29 climate finance deal a betrayal? Joining me, meteorologist Jim Dale and also climate scientist and social commentator Paul Burgess to discuss. Right, well, I'm going to start with you, Jim Dale. are these COP things important and essential? Just seems like a load of people flying out in private jets on a jolly to come up with a deal that they'll never keep.
Well, first of all, I would say, well, good afternoon, first of all. I would say it's a little bit disappointing in terms of the fact that it's shrunk from the 1.3 trillion to the 300 billion. So it's kind of bittersweet in a way, because in one way it's a success in terms of getting something from it. And remember what this is for. This is to provide defences for the climate changing in these poorer countries that are most affected by climate change. Not just the defences, but their day-to-day living if things do go wrong. So in terms of clean water, that type of thing. So in one aspect, it always seems to be late in the day, these COP things. They arrive, they spend a week talking, and it's like the final minute of the final second of the final whatever it is. They arrive at the deal. They've arrived at a deal, as I say, bittersweet. Perhaps you could quote those words in terms of too little, too late, because the bottom line is, will it prevent climate change affecting these poorer countries, these countries that are more susceptible to climate change? The answer is almost certainly probably not. They're going to need a lot more, and not just money that will save them in the end.
But you cannot prevent climate change from affecting these countries anyway. All you can do is potentially help to mitigate some of the impact of it. But climate change would happen anyway. Paul Burgess.
Yeah, well, this COP29 organisation hasn't achieved anything ever. COPs haven't. And we now burn more oil, more coal and more gas than ever in our human history. So it's a total failure that way. We've now managed to give away £41 billion, not just us, via the World Bank. That's gone missing. £41 billion on green funds to these countries, unaccounted for. They can't tell you who it went to, how much each got, and what it was for. That's how bad this is. And in who's paying for this? It's only the Western countries. Even the Middle East is considered an underdeveloped country. So Saudi, Kuwait, and all those underdeveloped, they don't pay a penny. It's meaningless. We are now, in terms of our CO2 contribution as a country, below per capita, below China. We're actually below per capita, below China. All this about extreme weather is ridiculous. According to the IPCC, page 856, in the IPCC table 12, there's no more human influence on rising sea levels, no human influence on glaciers, no human influence on all these things, just except for warming.
Well, you're saying that's according to the IPCC. Jim Dell is shaking his head as though that's not true. Jim?
Of course I am. Yeah, the IPCC are not on Paul's side. Paul's quoting something that's completely wrong. Let's make this absolutely clear. Eyes wide shut, Paul. Let me speak, okay? Because you can see quite clearly around the world. Take Valencia of late, but you can take other places, Dubai, Houston, you name it. You can see what's going on by the accelerated temperatures, You're right in one respect. I'll give you this, okay? The COPs so far have not achieved what they should have achieved in terms of what the intention is. That is absolutely clear. It's going in the right direction, but it's going far too slowly. And do remember, when these countries get affected, whether it's a country as a whole, in terms of, say, a drought or a major flood, it does affect living people, real human beings. And there is going to come a time... That was my job. Just on this point, just let me finish this point. There's going to come a time where a country such as Somalia or Uganda or wherever it happens to be suffers a major catastrophe that makes people move. Where do they move? They move to the coast. Where do they go from there? They get on boats. We've got problems with that already, and that's exactly what...
Well, the major catastrophes, Jim, the only real major catastrophes that seem to have forced people to leave have been wars, which we usually create ourselves. So I'm not seeing people leaving their place because of climate change. I mean, I'm not... maybe that'll happen in many centuries or whenever, but that's not why people are leaving. They're leaving their countries either as economic migrants or they're leaving their country because... for war. I mean, Paul Burgess.
A number of things.
No,
I thought I was seeing it, right. One, the table I'm quoting is page 856, AR6, chapter 12. Okay, that's where it states it. That's the science. Now, what we're talking about here is what the IPC say scientifically and what they say politically are different, because we have 190 odd countries get in a room together, one representative from each politically, who write the report that governments follow. They even go against their own scientists. So I'm quoting science. That's number one. Valencia floods, don't forget, that's very much my area. I've looked at about 80 papers on that now. And in Spain, those floods in Valencia were caused by the removal of dams, flood prevention dams, that were removed by the orders of the EC for biodiversity and things. I'm sorry, when you look at the data, it's not that way. Fact, hurricanes are now less than the past. Fact, not one island has sunk. In actual fact, they've grown up to 9%. Fact, Vadute, whatever you call it, VANTU, was the most prone island in the world to sinking. It's grown by 2.8%. How is that measured? By satellite. All this is fake. The whole thing is fake, right? And today we burn more coal, more oil, and more gas than we ever have in human history.
Jim Dale.
As we put all this, the whole thing
Jim Dale. Can I get Jim Dale?
Hold on, Jim. You make claims like it's not true what I say about IPCC.
Can we get Jim to respond to that? Jim,
I've just given you the
hang on, listen, if you both speak, no one will hear either of you. Jim Dale.
Thank you. Right. But what Paul is actually saying in terms of the oil, the emissions, is absolutely correct in terms of we're right at the very top. And that is the nub of the problem. If we don't reduce the emissions, then the heating that's going on, and it isn't just about flood either. It's about drought. It's about all the other aspects, major storms that get exacerbated by
hang on, Paul, let him finish.
The sea temperatures are at record levels around the world, the ocean temperatures that fire off bigger hurricanes. All of this is so obvious. You just have to join the dots. Open your eyes. Don't look at the absolute garbage that is coming out of the oil, the fossil fuel companies, because that's what Paul's following, and that's where he gets his diatribe from.
Are you following something from the fossil fuel companies, Paul?
No, not at all. No connection whatsoever with them.
Oh, yeah?
None whatsoever. Pardon? Did you
Don't worry about it. You carry on quickly. I've got to finish this.
With them whatsoever. I do my work for no profit. I subsidise this work I do. Right? I've done a video today which deals with all these stupid claims by the BBC in this case. You know, it's called BBC Propaganda Exposed. That's a video.
Well, yeah, I mean, but they would argue that they're just doing their job and reporting.
Yeah, well,
so
actually,
let's not go into what the BBC are talking about, because they're not here to defend themselves.
The most important thing here is the hurricanes are slightly less than in the past. The floods in Britain and around the world were far worse in the 1700s than they are now. The worst drought in ever UK history was 1760 something. If you look at all the worst droughts, there were 1700, 1800. I've listed them all in the videos. I work on scientific papers. When it comes to the floods in Valencia, I've actually contacted the scientists in Spain and the data.
All right, OK, well, Jim, I'll give you 10 seconds, Jim, and then I have to quickly move on. Just quickly respond to him.
Yeah, the World Attribution Climate Centre has said exactly the opposite to what Paul has said. In other words, you can get a storm, you can get a flood, but the point about this is the more energy you put into the atmosphere, the more energy you put into the oceans, the more it will fall out in terms of rainfall.
You two are never going to agree. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there, Paul.
There's less difference.
OK, we'll leave it there. Listen, we've got to stop there. But thank you very much to the two of you. They don't agree. They'll never agree. But I think we can all agree that COP was a bit of a cop-out, really, for a lot of the people that were there. Jim Dale, Paul Burgess, thank you so much. Right, well, 17 minutes after 5 o'clock coming up. The interview, joining me, the fifth-generation farmer, Paul Williams, who will reveal how Labour's planned inheritance tax rate will impact him and his family's farm. Stay with me. This is GB News.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now we're joined now by Sophia Viraji, the co-founder of the Azealia Foundation, which was created due to the tragic passing of her 8-month-old daughter to leukemia. The foundation is doing some incredible work for children's cancer.
Yeah, some really incredible stuff. They've just launched a PhD even where they're funding young doctors to specialise in childhood cancer as, get this, I wasn't aware of this, it's one of the most underfunded areas in the NHS. So not many sectors choose to go down that route, unfortunately. The charity, the foundation, have donated over £1 million worth of equipment to hospitals as well, and we're delighted to welcome Sophia. You've turned a tragedy and grief into triumph, I guess, and something so inspiring. Just tell us about that. Do you recognise that in yourself and the work you're doing?
Yeah, I'm here to always honour my daughter and to always continue her name, her legacy, and to support all of these other children fighting against childhood cancer.
It was all over social media. I mean, you were at one point probably one of the most famous families in this country because of Azealia and Azalia's fight. When you look back now at that time, does it give you comfort that you had so many people behind you?
Absolutely. The community that we have got, the humanity that we've seen in the UK and all around the world, in fact, has really touched my heart, and that kindness, love and support has always been the backbone of carrying me through this, to give me hope, to give me belief, and it still inspires me and encourages me till today to continue to do that, to show that light, to show that courage and bravery.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, 21 minutes after 5 o'clock if you just tuned in. Where have you been? I'm Nana Akua. We're live. We're on TV, online and on digital radio. We are GB News. We are Britain's news channel. Remember, you can download the GB News app, check out all the programmes on the channel and watch them in your own time. I'm Nana Akua. Right, well, let's talk about it. Storm Bert, it battered Britain this weekend, and it's strong winds and heavy snow across affecting many parts of the UK. Paul Williams is a fifth-generational farmer whose farm has been flooded by the severe weather. He's had sheep trapped in a shed surrounded by water. Bless the little things. And this is just another blow to him and his family farm after the budget's changes to inheritance tax. Well, I'm pleased to say that Paul Williams joins me now. Paul, thank you so much for joining me. It's really good to talk to you. I mean, look, I've been asking whether Rachel Reeves and the Labour clan will actually reverse this inheritance tax rate. It seems like madness. How will it affect you, potentially?
Yeah, it's very worrying. As you mentioned, I'm the fifth generation here on the farm, and what that means is, you know, neither I nor any one of the previous four generations have actually cashed in on the asset value of this farm. That's why I am the fifth generation, and it really worries me that, you know, I might well be the last generation on this family farm that stretches back over 100 years, because I really cannot give the next generation such a financial burden before they even lift the fork on the farm.
Well, how much is your farm worth then, would you say, the asset value? I know there's two types of asset. How much, in your view, is it worth?
I mean, do you know what? It's something that we've never, ever thought of. You know, when the farm is passed down to the farm, the last thing we think about is the asset value. What we think about when we are the next generation is basically we've been handed a family business for me as the next generation to look after as long as I'm working, and to hopefully pass it on to the next generation in a better state, always in a better state than what you were handed it for. So, we've never ever thought about what the farm's worth. Now, if you take a rough average of £10,000 an acre, there will be parts of the farm that are worth more, parts of the farm that are worth less. But, you know, even on that, and we're only a small average-sized family farm, so we are in excess of £3 million if you want to use that type of figure.
And it's the excess that would be taxed, the 20% inheritance, not the full figure, is it? So it'll be whatever that excess is over that they would have to pay, not...
Yes, of course. That's right. They talk about the first million, and then you've got your £325,000 allowance. But even at that figure, if something was to happen to me today, you know, that would land. It depends on what sort of figures you use and how you work it out, which is complicated at best. The next generation could at best see about a £300,000 IHT liability that's at best, you know. So even if, on 10 years, that's £30,000 per year over the next 10-year period, which the farm doesn't actually make that much in profit. So it's absolutely impossible. That would mean we would have to sell a part of the farm in order just to pay for the inheritance tax liability, which would then basically deem the farm less viable to make a living out of it because we've sold part of it off.
Yeah, you see, it feels as though it's a very ill-thought-out policy that doesn't really understand the nature of farming or the assets, why the assets are necessary, and the fact that land is actually part of the job. It seems very silly. Now, one of my panellists was saying that it won't affect 2/3 of farmers. Have you heard other figures? Because I've heard that it'll affect 95% of farmers.
Yeah, of course. I mean, again, you know, you're absolutely right. This is an ill thought of policy. And it's basically what we're already seeing is that two government departments are at odds with each other on the actual figure. Now, the Treasury says it's less than a third. DEFRA then says it's double that at 2/3. So obviously, you know, one of the two is wrong. I have a distinct feeling it'll be the upper part, because even looking at my area and my small part here in North Wales, most of the farmers around us are small family farms, and inevitably most of them will definitely be caught into this IHT trap. Now, people have to remember, as I said, when we inherit these farms, value is the last thing we think of. We've never valued the farm. There's never been a need to, because we are not in the business of selling our family assets. We are here basically looking after the farm, custodians, if you will, onto the next generation. That's why we are generational farmers. There wouldn't be any generational farmers if this tax was in 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. We'd have all had to sell parts of our farms.
It's just utter madness. It doesn't make sense. If you look at any third world countries, the reason they're that way is usually because of food security, where there's famine and things like that. We don't want to be in that position, and I don't think the government are listening. Do you think there's any chance they might consider U-turning on this one? Are you hearing any echoes that may be the case?
Not as yet, certainly not enough to reassure us as a family. You know, we are trying our best to protect I mean, I've got 3 young children, you know, way too young to start thinking about taking over the family farm. But at the moment, we're trying to protect them from all this news at the minute, because the last thing we want to do is discourage them in any sort of way, because purely they won't be able to afford to take on the family farm. Now, I think, you know, the country as a whole has to remember we're only 62% self-sufficient in this country at the moment. That figure's gone down by over 20% in the last 40 years, and it's declining. Now, that means basically if we ate all the food we produced in this country, we'd basically be hungry on the 14th of August. That cannot be a place where the country needs to be in a time where we're the most sort of, you know, the world is melting around us, and so therefore the last thing a country needs is to diminish the self-sufficiency of its food, because food security is national security. You will know as well as I do, during COVID, when the shelves started emptying, it was chaos. So, you know, the country as a whole has to understand that if you start attacking the small family farms that produce all your food on your table, you are risking the whole nation's security in effect.
Farm shop, actually, near where I live, which is where, you know, when all the shelves are bare and people had gone crazy buying toilet rolls and everything else like that and emptied the shelves. The farm shop was where I went. I went to the little farm shop and I bought all the food and meat. I mean, yeah, they robbed me blind because there was no food anywhere else. But that was where the food was. So I don't know what the government are thinking. Rachel Reeves needs to have a serious rethink about this. But let's talk about your beautiful little... Is it the sheep who were trapped in their little enclosure? Poor things.
Well, we have some land down at the bottom of the valley. We're right at the top. We're on the hill here. And we've seen some extraordinary rainfall over the last 24, 48 hours. And that little green shed that you see there is basically where we take the sheep into for safe haven during any adverse weather and especially any flood warnings. So the sheep are in that shed at the moment. Obviously, because of the water, we can't get to them. They're safe. You know, that's what that shed is for. But it just gives you an idea of how difficult things can be. You know, this isn't an easy job. You know, we aren't getting paid for doing this type of work, but we do it. We do it because we love it. We do it because we have a sense of duty in looking after the family farm that has been given to us. And as I said, food security is going to be a huge issue going forward.
Yeah, well, I think it's utter madness. I don't know why anyone would do that, but let's hope they have a rethink. Paul, are there not, very briefly, I've got about a minute left, isn't there something where you can give the farm away 7 years before? I mean, you don't know, nobody knows the order at which people will die. They don't even know how much they're going to raise because you can't tell when someone's going to pop their clogs and when you're going to get the money from them. And I think it's a very small amount that they're raising, so I don't know why they're doing it, but are there not some provisions there that you could use to sort of circumnavigate this?
Absolutely, you're spot on. You know, the problem is, up until this budget, the advice has been to all farmers who own farms is hold on to it until death. That has been the best policy. That's why we have our grandfathers even still living on farm and working. I've got to say, you know, I've got a 74, 75-year-old uncle. He's up every day doing something and he still lives on farm. So, yes, if you can do it in an orderly manner, that's fine. Given that a lot of the people who still own the assets are in their 80s, it doesn't give them... 7 years is very optimistic at the best of times. Where this falls down is if unfortunately we're living in... agriculture is the most dangerous industry in the UK. So the chances are that if anything does happen to me now, that 7 years is out the window. So again, this is a very, very ill thought out policy. They need to relook at it.
Yeah. Well, I hope they do. I hope they listen. There's a petition almost running now with over 1 million signatures of people who are saying they want another general election because they feel that they've been missold this one. Paul Williams, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. Really lovely to talk to you. That is Paul Williams. He's a farmer. He's got a family farm in Wales. This is GB News. It's coming up to 32 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is Sir Keir Starmer out of his depth? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, former Deputy Co-Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and founder and CEO of Youth Vote UK, Alexander Cairns. But first, let's get your latest news with Katie Bowen.
Nana, thank you. Your top stories this hour. 4 people have now died as a result of the weather brought to the UK by Storm Bert. It comes as the storm has brought more than 80% of November's average monthly rainfall in less than 48 hours, with more than 100 flood alerts in place across the UK. That comes as a major incident has been declared in South Wales. Speaking this afternoon at a press conference, authorities in the area say between 200 and 300 properties were affected by today's flooding, and a bridge, which was replaced after Storm Dennis, has been completely washed away. Large parts of the Midlands are under floodwater too, after the Kyre Brook in Tenbury Wells rose and caused a wall to collapse, flooding the Worcestershire town. Train lines across the county have also been closed throughout the day, and rail passengers are being encouraged to check before they travel. Yellow warnings for wind and rain are in place for western parts of Scotland and Wales, South East England and Northern Ireland. Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall says NATO countries are involved in a hidden cyber war with Russia. That comes as the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster will warn that Russia could turn the lights off and won't think twice about exploiting defence gaps in the UK. Pat McFadden is expected to give the warning to NATO members next week. In a speech, he'll urge countries to bolster cybersecurity and not underestimate the threat of cyber warfare from Russia. It follows warnings from experts last night who urged Britain to remain firm and stand strong against Vladimir Putin's threats. The Justice Secretary says the state should never offer death as a service. Shabana Mahmood made the comments in a strongly worded intervention over the assisted dying bill ahead of a historic Commons vote next week. In a letter to constituents, Ms Mahmood said she was profoundly concerned by the legislation, not just for religious reasons, but because it could create a slippery slope towards death on demand. She's previously made clear she would vote against the bill alongside Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who faced backlash after suggesting the changes would cost the NHS more. A group of faith leaders have signed a letter opposing the bill ahead of its debate by MPs. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has declined to say whether he will back the bill, arguing that he doesn't want to pressure MPs. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Storm Bert continues to give strong winds and some outbreaks of heavy rain in places too, and exceptionally mild for the time of year. Huge contrast to what we had just a few days ago. Storm Bert, just sat across the north of the UK, continues to push its way eastwards. Tightly packed isobars there indicating strong winds for many of us, and heavy rain too. Rain particularly heavy across central southern parts of England and Wales as we go through this evening time. Blustery winds and frequent showers across the northwest of Scotland as well. Gusts here 60-70 miles an hour for a time before easing a little later into the early hours. Temperatures overnight 6 or 7 degrees across the north, still holding on to double figures in the southeast. So mild for the time of year. Rain though initially across southeast England, but this starts to clear away. And if we look at the details for Monday morning, the centre of Bert still just sat there near Orkney and Shetland, giving strong winds, outbreaks of rain, frequent showers across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures around 6 or 7 Celsius. Brighter for Northern England into central parts of England and Wales, but a scattering of showers in the west. Still some blustery winds, and as I mentioned, the rain clearing southeast England too. So Monday for the day ahead is a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Showers most frequent across the north and the west of the UK. It still remains quite windy here, particularly across northern Scotland with the centre of the low just pushing its way eastwards. Colder air starts to dig in behind and we could see some of the showers turn to sleet and snow, particularly over the higher ground. Temperatures here maximum staying in single figures, so a little nearer to average for the time of year. In the south around 10 or 11 Celsius. As we go into the evening time, further showers pushing their way eastwards, remaining windy across the north of the UK. Perhaps another area of rain moving across into southwest England later on in the day. And for the next few days it remains mixed. There'll be further showers and rain at times, but there will be some sunshine and temperatures nearer to average for the time of year.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, where have you been? We're near the end of the show. I'm Nana Akua. It's 37 after 5. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. Remember, you can also stream the shows live on YouTube. But it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is Sir Keir Starmer out of his depth with warnings that Russia will wage a cyber war on Britain, backlash over the budget and fears of recession. Has the Prime Minister bitten off more than he can chew? Over 1 million people have signed the petition calling for another general election. Hasn't even been running for a full day. I mean, this is just a little bit of a day's worth of it. Where will it be tomorrow? They've been highlighting their frustrations with the current government with a massive majority who can pretty much do what they like. And if that weren't bad enough, the Prime Minister said this. Take a listen.
I have a problem with Lincolnshire. Have the people of Lincolnshire upset you in any way? Because you seem to have upset an awful lot of people in the county since you were elected back in July.
No, I've got absolutely nothing against Lincoln. It's a fantastic county, an underappreciated county, huge, rural, beautiful, and I've been there a number of times.
Well, we have a very cold snap at the moment, Prime Minister, here in Lincolnshire, and a lot of people concerned about the winter fuel benefits as well. Let me just play you this from Maxine, who was on the show earlier.
We just can't keep warm. People are going to die. Elderly people are literally going to die. How's he going to live with that? Is he going to have the courage to back down from a terrible decision?
She's wearing extra layers. She can't put the heating on this week, despite the cold weather, because of your decision to withdraw her winter fuel payment.
Well, every pensioner who's entitled to pension credit will
She's 63. She won't be pension age till 67, so she's not entitled to pension credit.
We had a publican from our part of the world who told me from April of next year he's going to have to add 30p to the price of a pint. Was going to be £4.50. In April, it'll be £4.70 to £4.80. I'm no economist. That sounds like inflation to me.
So that's Keir Starmer, BBC Radio Lincolnshire and BBC Radio Bristol. The BBC. Usually, before the election, they didn't ask him these sort of thorough questions at all. But now, here they are, and they would normally, in my view, be some who would probably be more left-leaning. So for the Great British Debate this out, I'm asking Sir Keir Starmer out of his depth. Well, joining me now is the former deputy co-leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and the founder and CEO of Youth Vote UK, Alexander Cairns. Ben Habib, that is Keir Starmer being grilled by local radio journalists. On the BBC.
I mean, that was a particularly bad outing from Keir Starmer because he didn't have the facts at his fingertips, and he should at least be able to defend his position robustly, however bad the policies may be, and I think he was incredibly badly prepared. But I think the really fundamental problem here is that it doesn't matter whether it's Labour in power or the Conservatives in power. Labour are worse than the Conservatives, absolutely, in my view, but they both govern without the British national interest at heart. So many of our problems could be fixed virtually overnight if they started making policies with domestic interest at heart and not taking the knee, as it were, to supranational institutions, globalist agendas such as COP29. I know you had a long chat about it, which has turned into yet another global wealth redistribution program.
COP 29, no one wants to play.
But it's basically our money going to other parts of the world. And we see this. You know, we can't afford to switch on the heating for pensioners, but we're paying $11 billion over to international climate change policies, $500 million a year over to farms abroad, even though we're raising inheritance tax on farms over here, $5 billion a year on the war in Ukraine, and $8 billion a year to house and feed and look after illegal migrants in this country, somewhere between 10 and 15 billion a year on migrants who are legally here taking benefits. There's so much that's wrong with the way the country is governed.
Also people from foreign countries in our jails, over 10,000.
Over 10,000 who should just be immediately deported. In fact, anyone who's here illegally, around 1 million people in this country illegally, they should all be detained, and those who can be deported. And if we started putting the national interest first, our governments would sort our problems out. I can't say instantaneously, but it would be pretty straightforward.
Well, that's why Trump is saying America first. Alexander Cairns.
So I actually think it's good on the international stage that we're going to be a leader in making sure that smaller countries that can't afford it are going to make sure that we can support them. You know, climate change, global warming is not a hoax, it's not a joke. You know, we're seeing big parts of the world. You look at flooding in Spain, you look at flooding even in this country. We've got to take it seriously. And
I think the flooding in Valencia was because of a broken dam. I don't think that was there were parts of it that were caused by dams bursting and things.
That's fine, but I think everyone knows that the weather changes have caused excess weather conditions in certain parts of the world that aren't used to it and aren't able to cope with it. I actually think, you know, the Conservative government wasted a lot of money, £2.5 billion on wasted PPE, you know, a billion a year on the Rwanda situation.
38 billion on track and trace, which failed.
Yeah,
38 billion.
Yeah, so actually, cross-government, cross-party, we've been wasting a lot of money actually. But actually, the wastage we saw from strikes, you know, the Labour government have dealt with that straight away. We saw lots of situations where the Labour Party straight, you know, coming into power, looked at the investment summit, getting lots of businesses to come in. The idea that we can't be outward-facing, Ben, I don't agree, because we do a lot of trade, a lot of businesses kind of UK trade internationally. So we can't be an isolated country where it's British first.
No, I don't want to be isolated. I'm not suggesting that for a moment. We have to cooperate with other countries and we have to trade with other countries. It's how we become prosperous. But you don't get prosperous by over-regulating, over-taxing. Effectively, that's what they're doing. Over-regulating and over-taxing British business and British workers. That's what's happened over the last 27 years. Every time there's a slight road bump with government finances, they raise our taxes. They don't think that there's another way to cut this pie. You know, you talked about the employment bill, which you might, from an employment perspective, from an employee's perspective, think that's all great. But it heaps burden on employers, and they react to it by either paring back their businesses or closing down altogether. And you've got to get that balance right. It's the same with the new the change in renting that they're bringing. You know, there's a new renting bill, I can't remember what it's called, but a bill on the way that domestic leases are held in. So you can't get rid of tenants if there's no fault associated with the tenancy, which means there'll be less landlords, which paradoxically will mean rents will go up. And, you know, so we keep doing these things. And whether or not climate is changing because of man-made actions, the net zero agenda applied in the draconian, unthinking fashion to which, in the way that it's being applied to the UK, is very damaging to the UK economy, because we're having to achieve things way ahead of other countries in the world. And that is, we're very low carbon emitters. So to reach the targets in 2030 and 2035, to comply with the Paris Accord and our obligations, international obligations, we are taking a massive economic beating. Other countries aren't doing it.
No, they're not.
And so what I mean is we've got to pivot and start putting the UK first and saying, you know, we're going to do it for the UK.
Surely you can't disagree with that. It's time to put the UK first and focus on us, really, rather than spending 22 billion on carbon capture. I mean, everywhere it's been tried. I think there was a place in Milwaukee where they tried it. I think it was about 7 or 14 billion and then they had to scrap it because of a waste of money. Ed Miliband is championing this policy with our money, which will cost us more in our own energy resources. And by the way, carbon capture, which is now being backed by the energy companies, you do realise the reason they're backing it, because what they use the carbon to fire into oil wells to release more oil and gas. So they are backing it so they can release more oil and gas. So it's just more and more the big players are making money out of something that's supposedly protecting the environment.
Well, I'm sure they're making money out of it, but the bigger picture here is longer term. You know, my generation don't want to be worried about our future, and we're very much, you know, there's a big portion of the public that are very supportive of taking action on climate change and global warming.
But I just want to correct as well, the flood actually was caused in Valencia by a phenomenon known as gota fria, or cold drop, which occurs when the cold air moves over the warm waters of the Mediterranean Sea, and it creates an atmospheric instability, as I'm reading this to you, by the way. So just to confirm that it was actually caused by a weather phenomena. Potentially, it was possibly made worse by warming in terms of the Mediterranean. So I was just correcting why that happened. OK. Well, thank you very much, Alexander Cairns and also Ben Habib. Coming up, Supplement Sunday, I'll be testing the panel on some of the stories that caught their eye. Stay tuned. This is GB News.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
We're talking about Gareth Southgate and his proposed Donald. There's a lot of rumours going around saying he's going to get a knighthood. So people like Nana are saying to me, why?
Because he hasn't won anything, has he? Look, I'm not a big fan of football. I watch England and the big matches, but he hasn't won anything. I mean, like, he hasn't actually won anything. He'll be following in the footsteps of people like Sir Alf Ramsey, Sir Bobby Robson, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What has Gareth Southgate actually won?
Right, don't ask me. Let's ask our guests on this. So, has he truly earned the right to do this? Should all England managers, should you become an England manager and then get a knighthood as a result, or is that devaluing the honour? There you see on your screen to debate this, Harry Harris, top football writer, and royal commentator Angela Levin. She knows a thing or two about all of this. Angela, what do you think?
I think absolutely not. I mean, I know he's a good example to people, but he's a sort of almost. He's almost done this. He's almost won that. You can't have someone to have a knighthood if you're an almost. You can't. This is someone who does the most amazing things. This is a hero. This is a serviceman. It's not somebody who does really kindly and looks after his people, and it's just not fun. I think it just diminishes the whole thing of giving people such a high level of gratitude.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon. It's time now for Supplement Sunday, where the panel and I look at some of the other stories hitting the headlines. But let's see what we've got. So I'm going to start with you, Alexander Cairns. Have you got a story for me?
Yes, I do. So Djokovic is going to be employing Andy Murray to be his coach for the Australian Open. So the last few Australian Opens, actually, Djokovic has opted not to necessarily have a coach, which is interesting. So he's looked at Murray, you know, long-time rival. They were in 4 Grand Slam finals in Australia together. You know, Andy Murray, I feel sorry for him. He was definitely born into the wrong era of tennis. And actually, Djokovic has decided that he wants Murray in his corner. So it'll be interesting.
That's quite good. I'm quite excited to watch that.
So my story is a brilliant reminder of why we have nothing in common with Europe. And it is about a cheese which shepherds in Sardinia allowed to be infested with the larva of a particular fly called the Piophila casei. I'm reading this. And these larvae grow in the middle of the cheese, and as they eat the cheese, they secrete something which turns this cheese into a gooey mess. And the Sardinians apparently love it. I can't imagine any Englishman enjoying it. And the EU, perhaps sensibly, but it's a sign of how it regulates things, has banned the cheese. And so the cheese has gone underground, and they're producing this casu, I think it's called, let me get the name right, casu marzu. Secretly, it's on the black market, so it's not falling into the EU's tax net, and they're producing and feeding people maggot-infested cheese. That's the Europeans for you.
Forget that. Yeah, no, thanks. Well, so mine is about that wonderful pub, because animal rights activists have demanded that the Sly Old Fox pub in Birmingham change its name because apparently it's derogatory towards foxes. What they want it to be called. So this is a pub which dates back to 1891, and it's had lots of famous faces, including Charlie Chaplin, going to it. And they want it to change it from the Sly Old Fox to the Clever Old Fox instead.
Ah.
Ah, come on, you can't call this Alexander. He's defending it earlier, so
It's a hop and a skip from clever to sly.
I think a lot of people in my generation never supported fox hunting, the idea that there's this barbaric sport.
That's just the name of a pub.
No, but the pub represents what happened in big part. Yeah, well, it's the name,
There's
you know.
a phrase, you sly old fox. You know
Yeah,
I just
exactly.
sly old fox.
Exactly.
Have you not heard of that?
No, but
that's what it's.
Or a silver fox.
Or a silver fox.
Silver-haired fox. That's what I am. I'm a silver-haired fox.
You could just call it the Prince or the George, like every other pub, you know.
Perhaps, well, that's what's wrong with the sly old fox. I like that. I'm looking for a sly old fox myself. Right, well, listen, in our GB News poll of the day, we asked, would you install a heat pump in your home as UK faces net zero plans? And according to my Twitter poll, according to the poll, 2% of you voted yes, 98% you said no. I wouldn't have a heat pump thing in my house. Right, and on today's show, I've been asking, do you want another general election now? And according to our poll on X, Benavides, take a guess.
Yes.
By what? What percentage?
90%.
What do you think?
I think 92%.
92% say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not going to agree with me, are they?
Well,
was it 92%?
No, it was 95.
Oh.
Yes. Yes, you do. That is the poll on X. And remember, there's that thing going out, that petition as well. 95% of you say yes, you do. 5% of you say no. So, obviously, the poll has gone over 1 million and people are still voting on it. I wonder where it will be tomorrow. Well, I've got to say a huge thank you to my panel, former Deputy Co-Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and also founder and CEO of Youth Vote UK, Alexander Cairns, for joining me today. And as ever, a huge thank you to you at home for your company. It's been a pleasure as ever. I look forward to seeing you on Friday at 9:30 with Britain's Newsroom. But now I'm going to leave you with the weather. Enjoy. Take care. God bless.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Storm Bert continues to give strong winds and some outbreaks of heavy rain in places too, and exceptionally mild for the time of year. Huge contrast to what we had just a few days ago. Storm Bert, just sat across the north of the UK, continues to push its way eastwards. Tightly packed isobars there indicating strong winds for many of us, and heavy rain too. Rain particularly heavy across central southern parts of England and Wales as we go through this evening time. Blustery winds and frequent showers across the northwest of Scotland as well. Gusts here 60-70 miles an hour for a time before easing a little later into the early hours. Temperatures overnight 6 or 7 degrees across the north, still holding on to double figures in the southeast. So mild for the time of year. Rain though initially across southeast England, but this starts to clear away. And if we look at the details for Monday morning, the centre of Bert still just sat there near Orkney and Shetland, giving strong winds, outbreaks of rain, frequent showers across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures around 6 or 7 Celsius. Brighter for Northern England into central parts of England and Wales, but a scattering of showers in the west. Still some blustery winds, and as I mentioned, the rain clearing southeast England too. So Monday for the day ahead is a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Showers most frequent across the north and the west of the UK. It still remains quite windy here, particularly across northern Scotland, with the centre of the low just pushing its way eastwards. Colder air starts to dig in behind, and we could see some of the showers turn to sleet and snow, particularly over the higher ground. Temperatures here maximum staying in single figures, so a little nearer to average for the time of year. In the south, around 10 or 11 Celsius. As we go into the evening time, further showers pushing their way eastwards, remaining windy across the north of the UK. Perhaps another area of rain moving across into southwest England later on in the day. And for the next few days, it remains mixed. There'll be further showers and rain at times, but there will be some sunshine and temperatures nearer to average for the time of year.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries Entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild